Welcome to Technology Brothers, the most profitable podcast in the world. Today, we are breaking down the history and controversy surrounding DJI, the drone maker. You're probably familiar with these guys.
And looking...
Not good. We don't like them.
And looking to create some new controversies.
Create some new controversies.
Like amp up the volume around it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. The reason we're doing this is because, it's a super fascinating story. It hasn't been told anywhere. Like, we couldn't find, when we were doing the research for this, we couldn't find the, like, oh, there's a definitive podcast. Oh, somebody did a documentary about them. Like, there's very few articles.
There's the primary video sources on
sketchy.
It are all AI generated.
Yeah.
With just slop content.
It's really, really weird.
Didn't even seem like it was, the audio was in English, but seemingly wasn't generated by somebody who spoke native English because they were weird accents with the audio.
Yeah, it's very, very odd. And then, of course, there's like a lot of drone operator content, like people reviewing the ins and outs of like the Inspire 3, how it compares. And like, but that's not relevant to this story.
Yeah, and Frank Wang, the founder, like hates journalists very rarely. I don't know. I wouldn't
put it that way. I think he just knows that if he
there was a
point
he's had some lines where he's like, he doesn't want to talk to, so hating journalists is different, but doesn't want to talk to the press.
Yeah.
Has gone years without doing interviews at different points.
Well, at one point, we'll get to this early in the story, it's all just like hero stuff. Like, oh, it was used to save someone who was trapped in a cave or trapped on top of a mountain. Yeah. And now it's like, it's being used in every war front. It's used in every battle zone or battlefield. So, I think we should kick it off with the Ryan Mack article from 2015.
And this,
or you want to get some background first?
We should do some background.
Okay, let's do that, and then let's go into the Mack piece. Frank Wang, born Wang Tao, is born in Hangzhou, Zhejiang Province, China. From an early age, he shows a keen fascination with flight and aircraft.
And one thing, I highly doubt he was given the name Frank Wang until he was probably in his teenager, or at whatever point he started interacting with the English world.
Yeah.
Because he would have just gone by Wang Tao his entire life. So at this point in time, let's be very clear, his name is Wang Tao. He was born in Hangzhou. And anyways,
Hangzhou. I mean, everything about this feels like somebody who would, be working for Nat Friedman or get a Teal Fellowship. Like, even though he's on kind of the near peer competitor team, and so we're going to figure out how to build our own DJI here in America, hopefully with some cracked Nat Friedman or Teal disciple. He does just seem like a hacker kid who's just genuinely interested.
And
there's
two things that happen.
And there's a different world where like we would be like promoting this guy and be like, you got to hire this dude, you got to fund his company, because like he's clearly a genuine hacker. He goes to Hong Kong University of Science and Technology.
Before that, there's two things that happen in his early life. He gets this book, I forget what it's called, but it's a story about this helicopter adventure, and it's all about flight and just humming around. So this was like before he was 10 years old. This was like an early obsession. And then as a teenager, he gets an RC helicopter. Do you remember these things? They were, I remember them. They were
really
unreliable, hard to fly. They crashed all the time. They were super fragile. And so he had some moment where he did well in, some exam, and his parents got him the RC helicopter. He crashed it the first day and then had to wait 3 months to actually get the parts to be able to get it back up in the air.
That's amazing. I think the very first prototype that DJI built as a company was a single. What do they call it? Like a single rotor, or just like a helicopter, basically.
And the other thing that's crazy, before he ends up going to university, his parents like had him living. He didn't live with his parents. He was like raised by family members. His parents were. Originally, one was like a teacher and then became a small business owner. His dad was an engineer. And so he basically, I'm sure he had some trauma associated with that. Just being a young child away from your parents.
Adjust the mic a little bit. So he goes to Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, studies electrical engineering, becomes involved in robotics competitions, and stands out for his interest in flight control systems for drones.
He also wanted to go to MIT or Harvard, didn't get in. And so there is another path where he becomes basically an American.
Yeah, just gets super America pilled. And it's just like,
So we lost a good one. We lost a good one here.
Yeah. What's interesting is, I don't know if you remember, it might have been this is a little bit earlier, but in like 2010, there started being those like viral videos of like Boston Dynamics, but there were also a set of viral videos from MIT's Media Lab and from MIT about drone swarm coordination. You see these really cool demos. It was basically a precursor to those fireworks shows, those light shows that we're seeing, but the tech just like never got transferred for some reason. Like MIT guys were doing this, and then they just didn't build the startup, because I think we'll get into why, because maybe there was a zero cost competitor that was really cheap and just crushing them at all times. So really weird market dynamic. But this was like 2003 to 2010, I think, was when a lot of the foundational kind of algorithms were written for like flight control systems. And really the discovery that when you put 4 rotors on a helicopter, essentially, instead of just one, it becomes way easier to calculate how to balance the craft. And so when he's at HKUST, so the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, he joins this team and participates in the ABU Robocon competition, and he wins 3rd prize among teams across Asia. He gets $18,000 in Hong Kong dollars, which is about $2,300 in US dollars, to develop drone technology. This funding, along with his growing reputation, encouraged him to pursue drone research more seriously. So he founds DJI in 2006 with the support from his mentor, Professor Li Zhejiang, and a family friend, Lu Di. Frank Wang formally founds DJI Dazhang Innovations in Shenzhen. Early operations involved selling flight control components.
In Shenzhen, I think most of our listeners will know, but this is like the industrial, technological capital of China. So it's not the center of like business, but it's the center of
manufacturing,
scaled manufacturing, consumer hardware, etc.
And I think like everyone knows, like, oh, iPhones are made there. They have Foxconn. Foxconn employs like millions of people. It's this massive company. But the really important thing about Shenzhen is that in America, it's like if I need aluminum, I go to the aluminum supplier, and they're in Idaho, and they ship it to me. And then if I need a little motor or a printed circuit board, it all comes from all over the place. In Shenzhen, it's like you walk across the street and there's a guy that can do this type of machining. And then you walk down the street and there's a motor company, and then there's a battery company. And so everything happens really, really close. There's a ton of things. And it seems like he was able to just kind of go to like the Silicon Valley of manufacturing. And it's much like when you're in Mountain View doing YC and, a company's failing, but they have a good iOS engineer. You just pull them onto your team. It's the same thing. Like he started with just selling flight control components for drones. He wasn't even selling drones. He's just like hustling.
And we'll get into this later, but there was his biggest competitor in the US failed not because of software. I don't actually know if they're failed. We should look it up. But
which one are you thinking of?
3D Robotics. It's like 175 million, and then they eventually just conceded on the actual hardware front. And we're just building software for DJI.
I think they wound up pivoting to industrial, basically.
Yeah. So one thing that is fascinating here is Frank ends up over time really churning through employees. A lot of people are leaving within a year or just frustrated with him, but his mentor, who was his professor at school, Li Zhejiang, and a family friend, Lu Di, who I believe was one of the first investors, they end up forming this inner circle, and both the professor and the family friend become billionaires
off of DJI. Wow.
Yeah. So and Li Zhejiang ends up becoming chairman, or has a significant board role.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in the early days, 2008 was still, Obama just got elected. And so this was like peak, like globalism. The internet will turn China into a democracy. Yeah. We're all friends, and China's joining the World Trade Organization. And so there's really nothing but positive news, and it's just like, oh, cool, like there's a new awesome company doing cool tech stuff. It doesn't matter where they are. Of course they're there because like China's good at manufacturing, we're good at other stuff. It's fine, we'll trade. And so all the initial stories are just about like genuinely great impacts of this stuff. Like during the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, DJI drones contribute to the relief efforts by capturing aerial images, assisting rescue and recovery teams. And we kind of saw that recently with the LA fires, where people were putting up drones, sometimes bad and crashing into planes. That was really bad. But so some of the aerial photography is genuinely very helpful to understand where the fire's spreading. And I'm sure
and it's 100 times cheaper than flying
a helicopter for sure.
It's safer.
And so the company was still pretty small and largely reliant on Wang's determination and external funding. In 2010, they start expanding. So he hires his high school friend, Swift Zhia, to head DJI's marketing efforts. And then they pivot to cater more actively to the growing community of drone hobbyists around the world, preparing the ground for broader consumer adoption.
Yeah, so early on, some of their first products were some of the best in market, but still clunky. Like now you can buy a DJI, get it, have it in the air, like probably within 20 minutes if you were speed running it.
Oh yeah.
Very simple to set up. It even integrates with your iPhone,
totally.
The native iOS app.
Yeah.
But early on it was still, there were these hobbyist people that were just obsessed, with flight, but doing it in a more, just not doing planes, right?
The big tipping point for the consumer moment, I think, was when the camera feed became live, so you could see where you're going from the drone's POV. And that actually happened through this integration with GoPro, where you'd buy the drone and it would give you the motors and the batteries and a controller that could fly it, but you would have no idea where, you wouldn't be able to see the drone if it got out of your line of sight, basically. It was very, very hard. And you could crash it.
And so if there's no camera on the drone too, then you're just sending it around.
Exactly. What's the point?
Kind of hanging out, flying.
And so people figured out that they could attach a GoPro to it and then record, and then when they got back, they could unload that footage. And then eventually people figured out, like the hackers figured out how to live stream footage from the GoPro. But then I think it was the DJI Phantom 3 had a GoPro integration that would let you do that, and then the Phantom 4 had.
I remember even as people started hacking these and adding functionality to them that DJI would eventually do themselves. I remember at this time being into surfing and snowboarding, skiing, things like that. People that community really picked it up because it was like, hey, we can get, before if you wanted to capture a big wave, you had to have a helicopter in the sky, and what surfer can afford except the top, like whatever, 0.01%.
Yeah, all my extreme sports buddies were super into this.
Yeah, just it blew up overnight. Yeah. And so that was that was kind of transitioning from the hobbyists, like people that just wanted to fly, to people that were using the.
And then the POV GoPro videos were going viral too, because this is the time when YouTube's growing really fast, and any backcountry skier would just mount a GoPro.
What year did GoPro go public?
I feel like.
Ben, could you look up?
Can you perplexity that? Thank you. They went public in 2014. Do you know how much GoPro's worth today?
Like a couple hundred?
150 million.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah.
Rough.
And there's a bunch of reasons for that, right? Like it just got to the point where people are like, okay, my iPhone's pretty durable.
Yep.
It's 80% as good.
Yep. And DJI has a competitor.
I have it in my pocket.
DJI has we'll get into this, but DJI has a competitor to every single DJI product, but GoPro does not. DJI has a competitor to every single GoPro product, but not reversed.
And as we'll talk about later, DJI sells everything at cost.
It's wild. So we should talk a little bit about the 2011 dust up in DJI America. This is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So
Wang needs an America guy, right? He knows that America, by this point, the hobbyists have started adopting it. He sees the early signs of consumer adoption. He's like, I need Mr. America. Of course, he finds a guy who was a former reality TV contestant. And so Wang meets this guy at a trade show, immediately impressed with Colin salesmanship, and they decided to partner to form DJI North America. And this like sub is focused on the U.S. and just broadly drone sales outside of China.
Yeah. The reality TV show to like actual power pipeline is maybe wildly underrated.
Yeah,
it's always seen as like very low status to go on reality TV, but Trump, Chris Williamson was the reality TV.
Well, I've talked about this with the players and people that want to join PMF or Die. I'm like, look, look at it as an opportunity to not just build your company, but build your brand. Like, we can accelerate you to that.
Yep.
Whatever, 5,000 X followers that can change your life, even if your company doesn't work.
Yep. And so they build this subsidiary, but very quickly there's this fight between and we'll get into this more when we dig into the next article around control over the entity, because of course DJI North America is owned by DJI, which is a Chinese company, which is so it says it is not entirely controlled by the CCP at this point. It's like it's very hard to get capital outflows from Chinese investments, and so there's a lot of like tricky stuff
so basically so I'm going to read a few paragraphs here. So by late 2012, DJI had put all the pieces together for a complete drone package: software, propellers, frame, gimbal, and remote control. The company unveiled the Phantom in January 2013, the first ready-to-fly pre-assembled quadcopter that could be up in the air within an hour of its unboxing and wouldn't break apart with its first crash. That's kind of like referencing Wang's early helicopter, the RC helicopter that crashed. Its simplicity and ease of use unlocked the market beyond obsessed enthusiasts. And I remember around this time, kids started getting them for Christmas. Stuff like that.
That's huge.
Yet things had already started falling apart between Wang and Colin Gwynn, the head of North America. DJI's founder didn't like that Gwynn was taking credit for the development of the Phantom and was calling himself CEI of DJI Innovations, a title that still stands on his LinkedIn page. Savage.
I mean, it is so American to for the Chinese company to come in and be like, we need you to be the face of this company, and then immediately the American is just like, I'm the man. I'm CEO. I'm CEO. Like, let me take all the credit.
Sources also say that Gwynn would often rush into setting up partnership agreements, particularly one with action camera maker GoPro, which would have been the exclusive camera provider for DJI's drones. So it sounds like, who knows, but Gwynn is just running around just like doing deals, being loud, and that doesn't really align with Wang American. That much. So Wang got cold feet in the GoPro deal and went against Gwynn's advice, subsequently angering GoPro, which is now... and this was written in 2015, is now rumored to be developing its own drone. So
so 2015 was really like the turning point, and I think that's what we should
we should cover, because in 2013, this is important. By May 2013, DJI attempted to buy out Gwynn's stake in DJI North America, offering DJI global shares that would have given the American a paltry 0.3% stake in the Chinese company. Gwynn was not happy with this, points out that his office's work in North America led to 30% of Phantoms being sold in the U.S., so it was a super key market. DJI didn't leave room for negotiation. They locked out all of DJI North America employees out of their emails, redirected all customer payments to China headquarters. By New Year's Eve, the employees had been fired and arrangements were being made to liquidate the Austin office's equipment. And DJI still ended that year with 130 in top line revenue. So they get into a lawsuit, and this is all around the time that Sequoia is leading. It's funny because the Sequoia deal happened in mid 2014. And they invested $30 million at a 1.6 billion.
3%.
So it's like, I don't even understand this investment, to be honest, because from that point, I mean, I guess
it was a fantastic investment. It went to 100 billion, right? Isn't DJI worth like 100 billion or something now?
I don't know. I don't actually know.
Yeah.
But it's still privately held.
Yeah, privately held. But
okay. Ben, can you look up their current valuation?
But yeah,
anyways, Gwen. So they get in a lawsuit. Apparently, they settle. Nobody knows the exact price at this point. But people have said it's somewhere around $10 million. So Gwen kind of got screwed,
shafted.
And sounds like a lot of the American employees did as well.
Even the 0.3 would have been. If I'm right about the 100 billion mark, would have been 300 mil.
Yeah. But you could tell from some of the ways that Wang would talk about Gwen, he never really respected him.
Yeah.
He just would say like, oh yeah, at times Colin would say something that inspired me, which is just like, you can imagine the American being like, dude, this is going to be huge. Yeah. and Wang's like, nice.
Yeah.
And pat on the back type thing.
Yeah, DJI's.
It says market $50 billion, but that was in 2018, and this year's
Yeah.
Yeah, so their last private valuation's like 15. So yeah, okay. Sequoia has it on paper somewhere around a 10x.
Yeah,
so they've turned 30 into 300-ish million.
Yep.
But
then
that money's locked in China.
Yeah, with their
so who knows?
Investment vehicle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the news and just everything about DJI starts ramping up from 2014, 2015, because Sequoia does the deal. Then Excel comes in and leads an even crazier round, I guess, in terms of ownership, like being very low. They raised $75 million from Excel, and it valued the company at $8 billion. So that's less than 1% sold. And that valued the company. They're raising a new round at $10 billion, and Wang owns about 45%. So it'll be worth $4.5 billion.
Yeah, and that's where it starts to get into. Clearly, they were in Shenzhen. I'm sure they got amazing terms early on.
Yep.
But the narrative starts to get a little bit confusing because Wang also talks about how they intentionally would sell their product at cost.
Yeah.
They just were looking to recoup the sort of costs, the hardware costs.
Yep.
And so it's sort of unclear how they're scaling this, because the thing about selling consumer products like this, if they're like 10xing, like they're not 10xing every year, but they went in a very short timeline from no revenue to $1 billion plus revenue a year. So to actually achieve that scale, you have to be buying inventory out, forecasting inventory. You've got to be buying, with that kind of growth rate, it's very hard to fully bootstrap it without huge access to capital, because you're buying your Q4 holiday inventory in Q2.
Exactly.
And where's that money coming from if you're selling the product at cost, right?
It's really
so there's a bunch of this article that we're referencing was written by Forbes, and it was written by a guy named Ryan Mack, who's not very well liked in the Valley, and he was also accompanied by someone named Hung Shao, which we don't have backstory on. But so anyways, this piece very much felt like a puff piece, right? Where
I mean, I think no one was thinking about DJI in any sort of negative sense. It's like it's a really cool tech company that's building hobbyist drones for surfers
that
and
people love.
Everyone loves it. It's amazing. It feels magical when you fly them around. And then also they just did back-to-back insane up rounds by the two of the top venture firms.
Yeah,
Sequoia and then Excel. And so you're just like,
but
all the green lights are flashing. I'm
but
like,
Sequoia Excel rounds, the interesting thing is they were just tiny checks, right? Like these are
tiny ownership. It wasn't the normal like, oh, we're taking 20%.
Yeah. So they're saying, yes, we want American investors in, because they could have accessed that capital
in
China or anywhere else. Yes, we want American investors in. No, we're not going to give you any amount of ownership that would allow you to have any meaningful say or anything over the company.
Yeah.
And so at this time, there's also an American upstart that we should talk about.
Let's start with the greatest threat to Wang's dominance of the consumer drone market emanates from the sun-drenched fourth-story office patio across the bay from Silicon Valley in Berkeley, where engineers for 3D robotics spent dozens of hours testing the latest code tweaks in their phantom killer, the Solo. Unveiled in April, the black drone whirs and buzzes around the roof with the sound of 1,000 angry bees as 3D robotics CEO Chris Anderson explains how his company is the Android to DJI's Apple. In admiring his quadcopter's elegance and simplicity, which took cues from the Phantom, the affable Anderson explains that it is the software, not the hardware, that is the key. Of course, because it's basically impossible to build a competitor to DJI in America just through the American supply chain. Even if you assemble it here, your motors, your batteries, everything's going to come from China. So they have to make the software argument. Unlike DJI's operating system, which is closed to developers, 3D Robotics made its OS open source to attract interest of programmers and other companies, such as dozens of Chinese copycats undercutting DJI's margins with even cheaper drones. If everyone is using our software, says 3D Robotics CEO, then we, not DJI, control the market. DJI started as a company back in the days when it was just a hobby for me, and to their credit, they accelerated brilliantly. Right now, we're playing on their home field, so we're playing catch up. And there were a couple companies that tried to make the software differentiation. Skydio, when they came out, do you remember their drone? It did have better software for like one cycle, where you could get on a bike, put it up in the air, drag a little circle around yourself, and say, "Follow me," and it would follow you perfectly. Like it would avoid trees and still follow you, and it would go under power lines and around, and you could ride your bike from home to work. And I had a buddy, Kyle, who worked there at the time, and it was like the most incredible demo. Casey Neistat was pushing it, but it was like 3 times the cost of a DJI drone. And then the next revision, DJI was like, we can kind of do the same thing.
And so that is one of the big problems with competing with DJI is from the beginning, and from our analysis today, they're still selling, when you look at the total cost to deliver these products, they're selling them at less than it costs to produce them, right? Because they were oriented around how do we recoup our costs on the hardware, but the costs of everything else, right? Like customer support, sales, all these things, like it's very unclear how they were able to finance this. And if you're coming in, even 3D Robotics by I think 2020 had raised like $175 million. How do you compete with a company if your product is 3 times more expensive and not as good? It's just not.
And so I think, just to take the other side of that, so like the tinfoil hat explanation is like they are deliberately undercutting costs to, put effectively like spy drones all over America, right? Yeah, that's like the most extreme representation of that side.
Or alternatively, they like the most extreme is to say they are a consumer. They are a Chinese military contractor disguised as a consumer tech company. And they could have tons of non-dilutive funding from the government.
That's covering losses.
That's covering the losses that are happening.
And we're not even seeing that. I think that's very reasonable. To take the other side of that, I would say that the idea of making no profit for decades is an effective business strategy. We've seen it at Amazon. We've seen it at Tesla. Tesla didn't make operating profits for a very long time. And I would not say that Tesla is certainly, Tesla could be a company that manufactures tanks one day. If we get into that type of conflict. Teslas are popular in China. In fact, you can't drive a Tesla next to the Forbidden City because Teslas have cameras on them and they don't want Tesla is sending that footage back. So just like we should, in theory, stop DJI drones from flying around like the White House and stuff.
Which they just lifted the restrictions and said you can fly them anywhere, which is the most insane to me. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But it's funny because
but my point is that there is a rational, like it's just purely economic, non-geopolitical explanation for selling a product at cost or below cost for a long time while you capture a market. And if you let's say the DJI was just like an American company, it would still be rational to say, let's just hoover up all the capital we can, sell below cost, get 70%, 77% of the drone market, keep everyone out, just keep killing startups until we just are so dominant that no one can possibly catch up. And then we can raise our prices.
None of that information is available. True. We only know that they raised $30 million from Sequoia and they raised 75 from Excel. Both those firms were there's very possible that neither of them even have information rights.
True.
Like it's a Chinese company. They have very, very little ownership.
Yeah.
They have less ownership than his inner circle, who has 10% here, 15% there, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
and so let's continue with 3D robotics to get into this competitive dynamics. 3D robotics, which has funding from the likes of Qualcomm and SanDisk, is well into its game of catch-up and has moved most of its manufacturing capacity from Tijuana, Mexico to Shenzhen. Gwyn, who is the company's chief revenue officer. So this is Gwyn's company after... Gwyn was the guy who was at DJI North America, gets in the fight with DJI, splits. He joins 3D Robotics and Chris Anderson to kind of like fight back and build. I mean, people are saying, why is there no DJI, American DJI? Like, this was the attempt in 2015. And it was certainly a rough go competing with DJI. So Gwyn is there. He's the revenue officer, and he's exploring the same retail channels he built up with DJI, and he develops a partnership to put GoPros on 3D robotics drones. Wang dismisses their chances, sounding something like the big kid on the kindergarten playground. It's easier for them to fail, he says. They have money, but I have even more money, and I am bigger and have more people. When the market was small, they were small, and I was small too, and I beat them.
Yeah, he's got some crazy... He's got some... So Wang is like...
I get why this guy doesn't do media anymore.
Yeah. He's not very well media trained. He also went on record around that time and goes, China has money, but its products are terrible. Its service is terrible, and you have to pay a hefty price for anything that's good. And it can't be understated that DJI is the first global consumer tech powerhouse to truly come out of China, right? It's the only brand other than TikTok, which arguably was like, not even a native Chinese company, to really win over the hearts and minds of consumers globally and get this level of market share.
Do you remember the hoverboard craze around this time? 2015. So it was like this like flat kind of skateboard with two wheels on either side, and you'd stand on it and it would balance automatically. And so it wouldn't work
like
not a
hoverboard. Those were like ripsticks.
No. This is the thing. So this was the fascinating thing, was that these products were birthed from Shenzhen, white labeled. And so there was no main brand. Like maybe Ripstick was the main brand.
No.
I'm thinking of Swagway was one of them.
You're thinking of the one wheel type thing.
No. It has two wheels. It's I'll pull up a picture, but people would just call it a hoverboard, and it had two wheels. You'd put your feet on it, and the wheels would be to the left and the right of your feet, and you would just kind of balance on it. So it was this. Do you remember this thing?
Oh yeah,
yeah. No one remembers.
Those came out of nowhere.
And it had.
Try to pull up a big picture and show the camera.
Like,
because like I remember like soldier, like it would be like rappers would just ride them around everywhere.
So this one's like Go Tracks, which is a brand. And it was like the classic, like get your teenager this for Christmas and they'll ride it around a little bit. It didn't really work on like city streets or anything. It only worked on like polished concrete floors. People would ride them around in like offices. I think it was probably featured on HBO's Silicon Valley at some point. Yeah, it's very like,
and I think drones, like Wang faced a ton of competition internally in China. Totally. Everybody was seeing how much revenue it was doing. Because the thing about Shenzhen is people on the ground quickly understand. A lot of factories can do the same thing.
Yep.
So if you see a factory that's just got thousands and thousands of employees and is just buzzing, you're the factory across the street. And you're like, well, we should get into this business too. So they all... It's highly, highly competitive. People copy each other.
Yeah.
There's tons of corporate espionage. Wang deals with this a lot. He even calls Shenzhen a dog-eat-dog society, which his words, not ours.
What? Oh my God.
He's not calling it.
Yeah,
he's not commenting on the
rough and tumble over there.
Yeah, he's just saying it's a little rough and tumble.
Yeah.
So, he says that the boutiqueness of the market always gets driven out. So, oh no, that's a Gartner analyst actually.
Okay.
And so, I think as opposed to these hoverboards, drones have the software, hardware, this full stack complexity, the costs that make it not the easiest product to. If DJI is selling a drone for $700 and they're not even making money on it, why enter that market if you also have to deliver all the software and this consumer experience? And
I mean, DJI built a good brand in America.
Yeah.
And then super great integration. I want to go through
this
a
guy
few
is
of these
like
posts.
This guy's like founder mode to a T, doesn't want to share the skies with others, intent on maintaining DJI's lead as drones expand into commercial applications, construction and mapping. And he's saying you can't be satisfied with the present. There was a good story. I thought this was funny. At one of the Phantom launches, there was this big, they had this huge keynote, and he no-showed the keynote himself as the CEO.
Why?
Because he wasn't fully satisfied with the product. He was just like, I'm not going to go. And
wow.
He didn't want to associate. He was like, it's my company, and I didn't want to associate with.
And this is the thing I keep coming. It's like requires a little bit of intellectual flexibility, because obviously like this is now like a rival military company. So, but like I feel like I would really like this guy if I was on his team. Yeah, and I would just be like, this is.
Well, I don't know if you would like him, but you'd respect him.
Totally.
Like, he clearly never cared about being liked, right?
Yeah.
He would, talk poorly about.
Yeah. But I would be impressed by him, and I'd be like, like, okay, this guy's like clearly got some really insane entrepreneurial and technical talent that's like super valuable and worth.
Yeah.
Laudable.
Like, clearly studied, electrical engineering and mechanical engineering in school, robotics, but then like clearly just kept studying it and being that obsessed with product. Never resting on, the Phantom is like the best drone in the market. It's like, cool, we have to make the Phantom 2 even better.
And so, I mean, DJI goes on the tear, launches more and more products. I want to go through some of the timeline on X, formerly Twitter at this time. So in 2020, Flo Crivello, who's been on the show before, says, "What's DJI's moat?" And this is an interesting question, because I think there's actually two different questions around the moat. It's what is their moat in China, and then what is their moat in America, because they are somewhat different. And I think it definitely comes down to software integration, and now integration between the different hardware platforms, because there are actually unique ports and integration points between. You can get a DJI microphone that plugs into this, but
I think it's actually more simple than that.
Sure.
DJI has basically owns Shenzhen, which is the place to manufacture these products.
Yep.
They also have continuously been so focused on selling them for the absolute bare minimum.
Yep.
And they have the most scale that nobody can truly compete on cost.
Yeah.
Right? If they're doing billions of dollars a year in revenue.
Yep.
And if you're in Shenzhen, let's say you like have factories in Shenzhen. Okay, well, you're not going to do the volume from day one. You're not going to be able to access the capital.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to, nobody's going to want to fund the number 10 player to lose money for 5 years. And so having that almost like monopoly, the moat in many ways is we own Shenzhen.
Yeah.
You can't build these products. Even 3D robotics is trying to make, imagine the sabotage. So one thing, they do this throughout the entire kind of history of the company. They're super aggressive on any new drone entrant. They'll flood the forums with comments. This sucks. This sucks. One of the Wired here in America, there was a guy who had a hobbyist drone forum. He was the editor of Wired, and he was, I believe, was involved with 3D robotics. I can't remember, but he realized that there was hundreds of users that had the same IP address in Shenzhen that were all commenting like really negative stuff.
I bought this, and
they would do it. They would do it on YouTube. They do it on the forums.
Yeah.
And so like they are aggressively making it impossible to compete on price. They're so focused on innovation too that it's impossible to compete on the product layer. And so in my view, it's less about looking at it as like what stops other people from coming in is like, well, we can't burn, if we want to compete with DJI, we have to burn $200 million in the next few years just to get any market share. And then the product has to be better so that consumers pick us.
Yeah, I was talking to some of our buddies about this, how one of my friends, Ryan Lackey, was saying that right now he's been actively buying the specific type of DJI drone that has this certain like LiDAR sensor or something on it, because it's basically a $5,000 sensor if you just bought it like by itself, but they sell the drone for like $3,000 or something. And so he's like, it's just the best way to get this particular sensor. And then I rip out everything else to like kind of de-Chinify it and get all the code out. And then I run like open source software on it. But he was like, it's like everyone should go and buy one. Like it's the best like hardware deal in the world right now. And so, yeah, it's like, it's not just that they're the lowest cost, that they're actually providing like an Apple-like experience, but then also driving the cost down. So the Chinese competitors can't just spring up and turn it into like the hoverboard market. And a lot of that has to do with like the hoverboard, like good software, it can only do so much. Like it's never going to get you to like
forward,
backwards. Exactly. It's never going to be like, oh, now with this software, like you can go on sand. Like, no, that's not going to happen. Whereas like really good software with a drone means like, yeah, it's not going to crash into the tree because it's going to detect the tree and not let you crash into it. And that's
stable.
It's more stable. And the video's better and it records better. And it doesn't lose the link with your phone when it's flying away. Like all that stuff's it's actually pretty difficult to build. And so once they have all of that, they have this powerful effect, but then they're also
they built software across the entire, that would make it so across the entire US a user couldn't fly into protected airspace.
Yep.
Which they just killed this year, which is absolutely insane. Or last year.
Just to get so we'll go into some of the political controversies as they start cropping up. But I mean, again, from 2010 to 2015, people were just like, oh, cool, drones. And then 2015 to 2020 was basically like, wow, like new Apple, like this is amazing. This is such a cool consumer company. It's amazing that Sequoia and Excel got a piece when they did, because this is clearly a banger company. And then things start to shift. But we have an interesting tweet here from Gabriel Lewis, who I follow. I just went and looked at who's talking about DJI back in the day. This was years ago. He says, I just got a DJI Osmo for my birthday. It's incredible and allows for smooth cinematic shots like this one on an iPhone. Highly recommend to anyone trying to up their Insta game. And it's just like completely apolitical, just like, yeah, it's a cool product. Like people weren't even thinking about this stuff with any sort of geopolitical lens. And then Palmer in 2020 is starting to think about DJI and how military drones will kind of play out. And he says, today we announced Ghost 4, waterproof, shockproof, intelligent, and silent. It's a small drone that can fly for 100 minutes, 3 times longer than a DJI Inspire, but with better sensors, longer range communications, and an even smaller carrying case. And so this was something when Andrew was launching the Ghost helicopter drone, a lot of people were like, oh, well, like it's cool, but it's not actually selling that well to the military because like it's kind of a niche use case. Like it's like I think most, first off, back then there weren't any wars going on. So it's hard to be like, yeah, we need 10,000 of these every month because they're just blowing up, like what happened with, like missiles during the Ukraine crisis. But at the same time, like it's very clear that Palmer understood that like the drone infrastructure is going to become important, and so he's already now in the fourth iteration of that. The
real crisis here is, even if and we can get into this in a little bit, but even if you have a better drone, can you make the same amount?
Exactly.
Can you make 1 million? Can you make 100,000?
It's attrition warfare. It's industrial warfare.
Because Shenzhen could almost overnight turn every one of their factories into just drone production facilities.
Be very, very easy to retrofit.
But yeah, another so the only kind of negative
take me up to like 2022.
Yeah, so 2015 to 2018 are just a generational run. They're winning Emmys for their drone camera technology. Frank becomes Asia's youngest tech billionaire, the world's first drone billionaire. He's like on Business Insider lists.
There's a good one in here where DJI becomes the official video partner of the the Amazing Race, which was the show that Colin Gwynn was on. And so it's like he's like, I'm on top of the world, like total comeback moment.
DJI also enters into a partnership to distribute drones to U.S. police departments, which is if DJI is a Chinese military contractor, just like incredible work. You know, and then coming up to 2019, and it'll get a little bit more frothy from here. DJI's figured out that employees were running this scheme where they would inflate the prices of costs that DJI was buying, and presumably like take out
padding invoices.
Basically like get paid out on the back end from the suppliers.
Yep.
And so they lost up to $150 million here, but didn't really make a dent. Like they're doing billions.
That made headlines like, oh, they've been defrauded for $150 million. And I read it,
like
I'm just
one month of their revenue. And so it's like, yeah, it sucks. And they came down on those people pretty aggressively.
It does kind of highlight like the chaos that goes on in Shenzhen. Like I'm sure there's lots of like,
I'm sure there's
deals stuff. Yeah. People like, making all sorts of.
There's not like, you're not going over there being like, I trust everyone that I'm interacting with.
Yeah, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, it's a Wild West. So by 2020, they've completely won. They have 77% of the U.S. drone market, and no other brand has more than 4%. So just crazy. Complete dominance.
That's more than the iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's more than Tesla.
And then we're going to just kind of like accelerate up into some of their other issues. So they were found in 2022 to have infringed on a patent from a company called Textron. Textron is accusing DJI of infringing on their flight control system patents related to hovering, right? Because perfectly balancing a quadcopter and positioning it in the sky relative to how you're controlling it on the ground. Very difficult to do. And by 2023, a U.S. jury finds DJI drones do infringe on the patents on automated hovering, and DJI has to pay $279 million in damages, which again is I'm sure that was like, basically nuked their entire net income for the year, but probably, again, do they really care? They have 80% of the market. And so they're still, as of today, the world's most dominant drone manufacturer. And part of the interesting thing that happens here is around this time, the Ukraine war is happening, and drones for the first time are being used at scale on the battlefield. So everybody woke up and realized kind of all at once, hey, there were actual experts, analysts that had been warning about the use of drones in warfare for a long time. But this was the first time that people started seeing drones as this is the next rifle, right? Like this is the gun of the new, of this century.
And so for those like drones that you see in Ukraine and Russia, usually there are sanctions that say that China can't sell that military technology, that dual use technology into the battlefield. But what happens is that people will go and buy them in countries where they're legal to sell and then just fly over there. I've actually heard of people like going from Best Buy to Best Buy, buying every single drone and then just hopping on a flight and selling them for 10 times the price and being like, I took a first class flight because I bought $10,000 worth of drones in America, went to Ukraine and sold it for $100K or something like that.
Yeah, and so to be clear, like both sides are using
for sure.
this stuff.
And there's these crazy aftermarket devices that will hold a grenade and then click one button and it just drops it or something. It's
and so
DIY.
So everybody realized at one moment, hey, American consumers have been supporting what could be China's most important military contractor, because the tech is dual use. It takes very simple modifications or no modifications at all to turn it from a spy robot to a cute little consumer drone that somebody's flying around their kid's soccer game or whatever, right? And I think like our conclusion, we can probably get into some more recent posts.
Let's go through the timeline, and I think that will take us up to the modern era. Martian space colonist says, can companies in China sue companies in the U.S. for patent infringement? What stops U.S. companies from straight up copying DJI designs? And I don't think it's the IP or the design that's super important. I think it's the software integration and the scale economy of like
manufacturing capacity.
You just look at DJI's manufacturing facility, and it's like, you know, it's a Stargate-esque, like, you know, massive factory.
So the same, you know, over the last year, people within tech have been telling consumers, we cannot afford to have China own the digital equivalent of the New York Times or the most important CNN, right? We just cannot afford it. Gen Z gets all their news from this place. Like, we can't. And they're like, but I like TikTok. And so when you think about people trying to compete with DJI, American consumers on average have no issue with it being a Chinese company, right?
Exactly.
They don't, they're not sort of enlightened to the potential dangers of that. And so if you tell them, hey, you know, here's this DJI product that's $1,000 and here's this American product, let's say you could set up, you know, you could manufacture even within 50% of the cost of DJI. Well, they've already shown they're willing to sell products and not make money on them. So where's your profit going to come from? And you can't manufacture them as cheap as them. And so, and the American consumer doesn't care that it's the
Skydio
you're
story.
American.
Like Skydio had just as good intellectual property, but they did not have the scale economies. And so their drone was 4K instead of
it's like, that somebody who's buying a drone for their kid's soccer game, it's just not going to pay $4,000.
Even for a better product, which I
did want us to film a video where we went and used DJI drones on the range as like targets.
We got to do that.
It'd be fun.
So Bubble Boy in SF says the DJI drone, when it hears me criticize Xi Jinping, and it just boom.
And this can't. I mean, so we don't have a tinfoil hat here, so we're not gonna go too far into it, but everybody should be somewhat concerned that Israel has the technology to blow up consumer electronic devices that have been in sort of hibernation state for however many years it was. The rational thing to do is to assume that China has this capability. So luckily, most people keep their drones in a box. So I don't, not too worried about them just like.
And here's another example of dual use.
But the last thing is the drone, all of the consumer tech, the same thing that can be used to follow you while you ride a bike around. That's hunter-seeker capabilities, right? Like it's all there.
It's way scarier than TikTok. Way scarier.
From a potential like loss of life, catastrophe.
Because it's like if there is like a hot conflict, like you could just ban TikTok.com at the DNS level. You could just tell everyone, hey, like they're actively spying on you. If you open TikTok, they will have your geolocation. They'll be able to send a missile or something like that. And very quickly you'd be able to have it. But if there's a wall of drones coming at you because they're able to manufacture 10,000 a day, like that's like much scarier.
This is an interesting. The other part about Wang that we haven't covered yet. Wang has had an obsession with getting robots to fight each other from as long as like we could.
His favorite movie is Real Steel,
which is a
terrible movie. But
he
Rock'em Sock'em
every single year
basically.
In China they have this thing called Robo Master, which is like a battle. Have you ever been to BattleBots?
Actually, when I grew up, they did a version of this at Caltech. And it was amazing. And they would change the goal every year. So one year it'd be like you have to build a robot that plays soccer against another robot that plays soccer, or you have to climb up some wall. It was all these different robotic challenges. It wasn't fully just fighting. Now there's a whole robot.
So Wang has such an obsession with getting robots to fight each other. He's sponsoring contests every year. Making TV shows, movies.
There's a documentary about it.
Robots.
They have their own like Drive to Survive F1 style show about RoboMaster. Isn't that crazy?
And then they also sell a DIY kit that turns your drones into killer drones. Which is just like, okay, So you cannot assume that Wang just loves the skies. Loves cool videos of snowboarding.
No,
you know?
He wants to fight.
He wants to fight.
Yeah, I referred a client to a web development shop, and I guess the deal went through, and it was like a couple $100,000 or something. So they wanted to send me something nice, and they sent me a DJI a drone, but one that didn't fly. It had like these wheels, and it would drive around, and it had this little like turret on it that could like shoot a Nerf dart. And it was like very much, it was a really cool product, because it was like, imagine an RC car, but instead of like $100, it's like a couple grand, and it's made by DJI. So it was like, it had a camera on it. You could drive it around. You could like do tank turns and spin and stuff, and it could go anywhere. It was really, really cool. But yeah, I gave it away. And so I was like, this is kind of crazy. But speaking of modifying these things, Jake says the IDF, and this is back in 2021, the IDF has been using small drones to drop tear gas on protesters in the West Bank. And tech CEO Pepe says, on the phone with DJI support trying to order the white phosphorus add-on. And this video is crazy, just dropping tear gas. So, I mean, these drones, we know that they've been used for this stuff. They're actively being used, whether it's DJI or not. And then Palmer Lucky says, in case it wasn't clear, Anduril has, in fact, received money from the United States government. I feel bad for the employees of companies like DJI and TikTok who have to pretend that they are not backed by the Chinese Communist Party. Also, don't forget that TikTok bans people for being gay. The only reason they don't do it in the US is because they need money from the woke teenagers who don't know or care about anything outside their bubble. Early to everything, Palmer. And then in 2022, the pressure on DJI is ramping up. And Catherine Boyle says, lobbyists for Chinese AI drone manufacturer DJI are successfully lobbying Congress to remove a ban on selling Chinese drones to the U.S. government and law enforcement. The Biden administration calls DJI a Chinese military industrial complex company.
So just one example of that, DJI drones are used to so the Uyghur Muslims in China have been there's been a bunch of reporting on basically they're held in camps, they're basically being genocided. DJI drones hover over the camps to watch them 24/7. So they're being used to spy internally in China. And so it's not a conspiracy theory that they're a government contractor.
Yeah,
they are a government contractor.
Of course. Luke Metro is highlighting a story. He says, wake up, babe. They just reverse engineered DJI Aeroscope. And so I think what the story was that someone figured out how to hack into the DJI system to, when you see a drone, figure out where the operator is.
Interesting.
So very quickly, you see a drone in the sky, okay, we could shoot the drone down, but we probably want to get the operator. And so this was like very risky if you're using a drone in the field. You're putting out a signal in Ukraine. You don't want to like have some sort of EMF signal going out that can be tracked. Santiago says, who's building the American-made DJI competitor for consumer/agriculture? This is a critical space, and I'm eager to back credible efforts in this space. DMs and checkbook open. CC Josh Steinman, Naval, Steve Simone, and Yukon K9.
Yeah, and people like Naval have been actually really loud about drones, the use of drones as weapons. I think it was his quote saying, the drone is the rifle of this century.
I mean, Naval was saying that like he's worried that the idea of traveling in a plane will be something that just doesn't happen anymore, because the economic equation of if it costs someone $10 to shoot down a 747 with a drone, people just won't fly anymore. Yeah. And if it's just like a random terrorist can just build a drone and just take out a commercial aircraft, flying is just going to be kind of impossible. And it's kind of unclear what countermeasures you could do to just like a normal flight if things get really crazy with like drone related terrorism or drone related.
Yeah, the only thing
I'm not sure
I don't want to
buy it.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's never been the reason that people don't kill people all the time.
Yeah,
is not because it's super expensive. Right? You could buy a bullet for $1.
Yeah.
but still people are not like going around, becoming murderous over that. But I think it's a sort of dystopian.
Yeah. Hopefully just like electronic countermeasures. You could just have every 747 have something that just blocks signals from most commercial drones, and then they're blocking them. I mean, even with the fires with that drone that hit the firefighting plane and took it out of commission, like that could probably have been stopped with some countermeasures. Ashley Vance in 2024 says 2.5 years into its war with Russia, Ukraine still relies for the most part on DJI drones built in China. This means Russia has modest pull over the PRC, and the West still can't make cheap drones.
I got so many notifications that my phone
vibrated
across the table.
That happens every time we stop recording. It's always just a flood. I think it might be interesting to go through this Q&A with DJI CEO Frank Wang, the creator of the Phantom drone. This is all the way from back in 2014. The Wall Street Journal asks him about starting the company. He says, before we started the company, I spent 3 months intensely working on the project. At that time, I was enrolled at the university, but I skipped all the courses and just went to my home in Shenzhen. I would wake up at 2 p.m. and then work until like 5 or 6 a.m. for days at a time. One time, when I did go back to the university lab, I tried to use my ID card, but it didn't work. My heart sank a little bit because I thought I was kicked out of college by my professor, but I'd actually forgotten to pay my tuition. At the beginning, when we started the company 4 years ago, we made flight control systems. We focused on the operating systems for the drones, but it was hard to use. The drones were complicated and the controllability was relatively poor. People couldn't use it on a larger scale. We felt a multi-rotor drone should be very simple, very small, very reliable, and very cheap. If people could use it, the market would be larger. And he was 100% right. So slowly we went from making the flight control systems to multi-rotor drones. Who is your role model? This is the headline. Well, of course, it's Steve Jobs. Personally, I was very aggressive. At college, I took part in team competition for robotics twice. The first time I worked very hard, and technically we did very well. But my teammates did not feel comfortable working with me. I was too aggressive. I just wanted to win. The second time, I was still aggressive, but I found the right team partner, and the leadership was stronger, so that time we won. I realized that not being so easygoing is not such a good thing. But after I read Steve Jobs and discovered he had the same type of personality, it encouraged me. I understood that staying aggressive is the right thing to do to build a company. It's fascinating. Are we seeing the emergence of a new breed of Chinese companies such as DJI? Chinese companies are getting better. Before, they lagged behind. Now, more and more Chinese companies are doing well worldwide, like Huawei, Tencent, and Alibaba. I think later, more Chinese companies will go global and their image will gradually change. It's definitely right about that. I think the important thing is vision.
Yeah, we are actively trying to change the image of DJI.
That's what those companies have one that is in sync with the world. What's the future of DJI? I believe that the direction of our company is driven by our initial dream to make a very easy-to-use product that can realize the human dream to fly and to make it perform so well that everyone can enjoy it. In addition, we will develop our business in agricultural and industrial and all kinds of fields. The next 5 to 10 years will be a very exciting period for unmanned aircraft, and I'm looking forward to the future. And this was 10 years ago. And
you got to give him credit for being very early and very right and just great execution. That said, I do want to jump forward and talk about, we have an article from the New York Misinformation, the Times.
The old-timers?
The old-timers from April 25th, 2024, so just less than a year ago. And so, yeah, basically around the time that people got concerned about TikTok.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of concern around DJI.
Yep.
Congress. Now Congress is weighing legislation that could kill much of DJI's business in the United States by putting it on a Federal Communications Commission roster, blocking it from running on the country's communications infrastructure, which would be an interesting approach. And the other thing that's interesting here that's different than TikTok is nobody's paid anything to TikTok, right? You maybe buy some products on TikTok from ads, but some of the additional controversy around banning DJI is that consumers have spent thousands of dollars on these products. And if you brick them through legislation, there can be a lot of pushback there. People love the drones, right? Like there's people that race drones and all that stuff. So
I think it would be very slow though if they were to ban it because
which is why we need to ban it now.
I think the biggest problem is like bringing in new drones that could have even more advanced capabilities because realistically the military capabilities of like a Phantom 3 or Phantom 4 or even like a DJI Mini 1 are not going to be as next generation as what's coming across in the next cycle of products. And then also even with what the proposal for TikTok, that the actual legislation was that Apple and Google cannot host the apps in the App Store. But if you have the apps installed, they'll continue to work until the operating system updates and breaks the app. And so like this would be kind of a slow phase out. And then even some of these drones that can be used without the app for a while. So I don't think, and honestly, most of these drones, people fly them for, Christmas Day, the day after, and they start collecting dust. I don't think it would be that big of like a massive loss for consumers.
Yeah.
But people would certainly be upset.
Yeah. So it says if passed and signed into law, the legislation would effectively ban any new models of DJI drones from that point on. It would not apply to drones already in use. And there was a House bill that had bipartisan support. It's been met with a muscular lobbying campaign by DJI. The company is hoping that Americans who use its products will help persuade lawmakers that the United States has nothing to fear and much to gain by keeping DJI drones flying. And Representative Elise Stanific, who's a Republican in New York and was one of this bill's primary sponsors, says DJI presents an unacceptable national security risk, and it is past time that drones made by communist China are removed from America. Government agencies have shown that DJI drones are providing data on critical infrastructure in the United States to the Communist Party, Ms. Stanific said, without elaborating. Any attempt to claim otherwise is a direct result of DJI's lobbying efforts. So DJI sells a lot of drones in the United States. The beauty of selling them to U.S. consumers is that those consumers are basically providing, if DJI, who knows, it'd be really interesting. I doubt they have this information public, but I bet it's like DJI drones take 500,000 flights a year, a day in the United States. Who knows? It could be way less. Or
I have a good summary of this exact point from Hunter Weiss. He says, I do think there's a huge problem with DJI drones as someone who has used them for 8+ years. Every flight transmits the footage back to the CCP. All these drones are elite mapping spyware, and there's millions in circulation. They record every coordinate per flight, plus all imagery is then processed through their app back to China. It's the greatest mapping software ever. They made billions on the drones while getting all the footage from across the world as personal data back to the CCP. Their customers became the greatest spy asset for mapping real-time locations for every new flight. Very interesting. I do think that there's a way to kind of like sandbox the drones, and like actually see what data is being transmitted. I think that almost the bigger issue is that people are they're just voluntarily saying, yes, please upload my footage to the DJI cloud. And they're actually opting in to send the data. So I don't think that they actually have to steal it.
Yeah, but to be honest, let's be real. Like, you cannot trust.
I think they could be stealing it, but
CCP.
Yes, I agree with you, but I think that they might not even need to be stealing it because I think people might be voluntarily saying like, "Yes, please send my drone flight." It's like when you get that question that says like, "Would you like to send diagnostics to the developer?" That's basically like, "Yes, I'm opting in." Breaking news?
No, I wanted to kind of catch people up to speed. So. Basically, they go back and forth. Yeah, so I was going to cover the Verge piece.
Sure.
They go back and forth for a while. They have spokespeople, these lobbyists, and they go, this is Regina Lynn. We should ping her and ask her what it's like to be a traitor to the United States. Our products are designed and intended to promote the general good and benefit society. And they have, she denied that the drones have been involved in human rights violations and said they were not meant for surveillance. Okay, surveillance and capturing live video are one for one, right? You cannot argue that, we're just capturing live video of a scene is surveilling said scene. And anyways, another person says DJI's ownership is primarily concentrated in the hands of its founders and early stage executives, none of whom are government officials or representatives of government or state-owned entities.
Yeah.
And so the reason that this just doesn't stand up is like, you can be Jack Ma, and if you say even any type of negative comment about the state, get disappeared for months and months and months. So it doesn't matter.
And
the
so
government
that implicit
owns you.
threat, that implicit threat
you.
informs your decision making, even if you don't have a contract or a CCP email address. You don't even need a handler. And just the vibe that they would
make
come
one
for
comment
you
on a stage and be disappeared.
Yes.
So they don't need to own the company; they own the founders, right?
Yeah, and so the latest news is that Sam Lessin is quoting The Verge. The Verge says DJI will no longer stop drones from flying over airports, wildfires, and the White House. And Sam Lessin says, I see how this works. We move to ban China's TikTok, so they respond by dropping DJI's no-fly zone enforcement for drones. Welcome to 2025 international relations.
And so to me, this seems like we're getting banned, YOLO. Let's just capture as much data as possible.
Oh, I didn't even think about it as capturing data. I thought about it just like straight up as like if we turn this geofencing off, like someone might use a drone for just straight up terrorism and like crash the White House.
Just pure chaos. But the other side is some enthusiast is like, I want to fly over Area 51, you know, and like you can't stop a drone from if somebody's like some crazy, you know, UAP person's like, I'm going to fly over Area 51. Yeah. And it's not gated.
Well, you can stop it if you have an Anvil unit on site, but a lot of places don't.
Going to launch isn't the Anvil like a explosive?
No. Yeah. Well, no. The original Anvil just has just a weight in it. And so it's purely kinetic. And this is the whole story with Palmer figuring out how to shoot down DJI drones.
I know.
He was looking at electronic warfare, takeover. And what he realized was that if you just run into it, that's actually the most efficient way to destroy it. And so the Anvil is just like, it's a quadcopter basically with just like some mass inside, and it just crashes into the other drone. They do make one with high explosive in it now for like taking out planes.
Let's play it out. If some somebody that watches a little bit too much Jesse Michael goes down to Area 51 and is just like, I know my drone's going to get killed, but I'm going to get live video.
And then I'll upload it, live stream it.
I'm going to live stream this.
Yep.
And just fly it as fast as I can. By the time the Anvil reacts, maybe you're halfway across the base, right? So it's like, I think it's a little bit, it's such a fuck you to our lawmakers, to the people in the military that are concerned about this.
Yeah. Do you want to read this one or move on to the next
Hunter's
one?
on a
roll.
Hunter's on a roll, friend of the pod. A great case study and he actually worked for Casey Neistat back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
A great case study for what not to do in the diversification of your business's products. GoPro tried to enter the drone industry in a market already controlled by DJI. To top it off, the GoPro drone started falling out of the sky. Refunds, returns, warranties, massive loss. I think it was smart for GoPro to try to do this. They were the company best set up. They had a brand. They had distribution. They already had good quality cameras. Entering drones should be commoditized to some degree, right?
Sure.
Like, we know how to make them now.
There's no network effect.
There are patents, but there's no network effect.
Yep.
And then
there's a so basically the GoPro story where like they probably missed the real opportunity, which was figuring out how to change the playing field in Washington to create more of a level playing field with some sort of tariff at the very least.
Yeah, if you just make what we've needed was a 1,000% tariff on Chinese drones. Because it's like drones are such a nice to have, right? Like there's totally a world where people that are videographers have drones.
Yeah.
Like they have nice cameras and you just hire them when you want some drone footage.
Exactly.
And then they could afford to spend a bit more.
Yeah.
And we all would be fine. If somebody posts on their Instagram a video of them like flying over a hike, that's a regretted user second right there for me. I don't want to see your drone footage. I just like, it's not that interesting to me.
Yeah. What else?
So this is an article from December 18th. From The Verge. DJI escapes U.S. drone ban, but may get banned automatically unless Trump steps in. the U.S. Senate passed a massive defense bill that gives DJI 1 year to prove its innocence or it gets banned.
Oh, interesting.
And so this is the National Defense Authorization Act.
Yeah.
It's their annual defense spending bill. And it says, while it did not contain the full Countering CCP Drones Act, which was the act that I was just talking about, provisions, it kicks off a 1 year countdown until its products are automatically banned if DJI cannot convince an appropriate national security agency to publicly declare that its products do not pose an unacceptable risk to the national security of the United States. The act instructs the FCC to add DJIs to its covered list under the Secure and Trusted Communication Networks Act. Not only does that list keep that gear from running on U.S. networks, it bars the FCC from authorizing their internal radios for use in the U.S., effectively blocking all imports. And so what's smart about this is all of the lobbyists that were hovering over these lawmakers being like, don't ban it. It's just like a fun app. Your constituents love it. We've sold, they were telling people, we've sold 50,000 drones in this swing county, right? This town where you
got a lot of fans there.
You got a lot of fans there. You sure you want to do that? And so now they're actually putting it in the hands of a national security agency, which in theory is much harder to influence.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
And so this is like, to me, for us, like, I think like TikTok is information warfare. Yeah. DJI is like purely spyware with this like, asymmetrical risk of maybe these things could actually turn, maybe there's backdoors and these things could actually be turned into actual weapons.
Yeah. And I think the tide is definitely turning. I mean, that's a great example, but even just culturally, you can see the tide turning. Josh.
And they're also worried about DJI just exploiting the loophole by white labeling its drones. Yeah. And you could see a scenario where certain filmmakers are like, I love DJI so much, they're like buying black market DJI drones and like trying to figure out ways to use like shorter, wave.
Yeah. So Josh Wolf says, sadly, we are at war. Wars imagined by sci-fi of yesteryear. 1, distribute tech, DJI drone, TikTok. 2, habituate or addict the user. And 3, pervert the reason you are defiant to comply with American sovereignty and weaponize user outrage. And that's the last second that you mentioned, was like weaponizing the user outrage. And I mean, this vibe shift, this is a good example of this from Jason Liu back in April of 2024. He says, DJI is the hardware version of TikTok. It gets American operators addicted because of the economic model. It's so cheap and you can go and resell your footage. So it's a good business. Steals data, intelligence to PRC. Hollows out domestic drone production capacity. We saw that with 3D Robotics and Skydio and so many other companies. And every American dollar going there is funding the Chinese military industrial complex. And this was definitely like early to the story, but still 400 likes. Yeah. And I think we should close. Do you have another thing you want to go into?
Another
mess. It's good.
I have another. I just have some interesting. So I on the r/drones Reddit. Yeah. There's people 1 month ago commenting, I've never encountered a situation like this. To me, it feels like learning. They're commenting on the potential ban. Yeah. It feels like learning videography and having Final Cut and Apple banned. A lot of upvotes on that. The biggest change will be price. U.S. drones are prohibitively expensive. Many who would like to fly for fun won't be able to afford it. Yep. Which is just like,
it's bullshit. True in the short term, but not the long term. Because in the long term, we
can just
look at how cheap Starlink
is.
Yeah. Starlink is so cheap. Why? Yeah. Because Elon built a massive factory that cranks out 1 million of them. If we just build that, we're fine.
The reason I think it's funny to look at these comments is because DJI has a known history of making fake accounts and commenting.
Totally.
And so that they're flooding these.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it is insane when people maintain that like it is impossible for us to build a cheap drone in America because the labor cost is not even that much lower in China anymore. Like that, the whole like labor arbitrage, it's cheaper to hire someone in China, that disappeared a couple of years ago and it's moved to other countries. Like I think AirPods are made in the Philippines now and there's a few other places. The main thing is just the industrial buildup all of the different manufacturing plants and the coordination of having all the different machinists and experts in the same place in Shenzhen where you can just walk around. But it's totally doable in the United States if we build a big facility, and we see that evidence with Starlink and Tesla too. And so it's clearly doable. We just need to have the political will to do it. And so, do you have anything else, or should I close out with this Josh Steinman banger?
Always love to close out with Josh because he was on in the national security community, former operator
8 years ago. Yeah,
but
early to all of this.
I just think so.
What else you got?
North Dakota actually already banned DJI drones.
Oh, you're right. Just as a state. Wow.
Yeah.
So you can't buy them and ship them there, maybe, or
and even
what happens if I
they're
go on a vacation
requiring
and bring one? Do I get in trouble?
They have something called the drone. They're trying to fund a drone replacement program to help. You have to turn in, the various agencies in North Dakota have to turn their drones in, and then the drones are going to be used for counter UAV research. Right. So that's a good. If
target practice.
If our military can buy back all these drones, we can use them for target practice.
That's
ACS
great.
can use them.
Fantastic.
So
let's close out with Josh. He's quote tweeting OSN Technical, who says, breaking news, China's DJI, the world's largest drone manufacturer, has disabled U.S. geofencing on its drones, enabling flights over airports, military bases, and no-fly zones. And Josh says, use Executive Order 13873 to ban DJI. Do it now.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea what executive order that is, but Josh clearly does. And what I love about following him is that he clearly understands the actual tactical moves that need to be done beyond just, tweeting about it or talking about it or having a couple like news cycles around this. And I think this DJI story will grow a lot in the coming years.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time until there's a question about like, okay, when is it going to happen? And my optimistic scenario is that there's not necessarily a Jeff Yass to DJI in the same way that there was to TikTok, where yes, Sequoia has a position, but they spun out Sequoia
they can't
China,
publicly defend it,
and they separated the funds.
Yeah.
So the true Sequoia guys who are in America don't have economics necessarily to the same degree in DJI. And then yes, Excel has a position, but it's a small one. They might have sold it already. Like we don't even know. They have a lot of other positions, and so it's not the same thing as Jeff Yass having $16 billion on the line with TikTok. Yep. Like at best, Excel has $1 billion maybe. Like if they had 1% of the company still.
No, there's nothing that says they're $100 billion company.
Sure.
Anymore. They probably would be if valued as purely a military contractor. And I bet you internally in China, they're like, this is $1 billion. This could be a $50 billion.
Yeah. And company. So, and I haven't seen any of the Excel guys come out as like super pro-Trump, donating a ton, like really trying to get TikTok not banned. And so it does feel like the American economic interests are a lot less intertwined.
Yeah.
And also the TikTok community, there are like millions of TikTok creators that are like, this is my job in America. And I don't think the videography community is nearly as big or outspoken.
Yeah.
It's mostly a lot of people in maybe Hollywood, but that's it. And that's not a huge Trump constituency. So I don't know. I think we could see a ban, but it needs to get more attention.
This just came to my mind because yesterday we were saying everybody should have their own Project Stargate, where they go out and try to raise $7 trillion. Even if you miss, you'll land.
$500 billion would be fine. 500 billion.
Yeah, you'll land. Shoot for the stars. Even if you miss, you'll land on the moon.
Put together a crazy doc.
But we need a Project Stargate for domestic drone manufacturing, like to actually get anywhere close to Shenzhen capacity, which in a global conflict scenario, I promise you that China will stop giving us drones, right? Because it will be drone on drone violence. And so we need something at that scale to basically say, hey, if this is the firearm of this century, we need to invest $100 billion into setting up the ability to make millions of these a year in the United States.
Yep. That's a great place to close it out. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with the timeline in just a minute. Welcome back to Technology Brothers, still the most profitable podcast in the world. We are giving you a little bit of an update to Project Stargate, which we talked about yesterday. We did a whole deep dive on Stargate. Pretty crazy story, but it's still evolving on the timeline on X. Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and Satya Nadella, some heavy hitters in the tech world, are duking it out. Jordy, what are they saying? And are they posting slop or bangers?
We have to slop or bangers. We got to name this the timeline in turmoil.
Timeline in turmoil,
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So again, our global
fighting.
Our tech overlords are fighting. They're going back and forth, not sparing any words. And this morning, Sam Altman clearly has Lex Friedman in his ear because he says just one more mean tweet and then maybe you'll love yourself. ... Which is
harsh, dude.
I mean, it's also, I think this is kind of a cringe post.
Well, yeah, because it's going so hard, it's like,
and
it's like cutting to someone. It's trying to cut. It's making an attempt to cut someone.
Where's the proof that Elon doesn't love himself?
Yeah,
right? It's sort of like
it's
like
if
somebody said like, "Oh, you're doing that because you don't love yourself," you'd be like, "I love my life. I have an amazing wife, 3 sons.
Yeah,
I live in California, and I." What's not to love?
Yeah, exactly. It's like
I'm just the modern Marlboro man, you'd say.
I mean, just in tech generally, I think that we like to be a little bit more rigorous and data driven with our criticism.
Yeah,
of
this
each
was
other.
just kind of like playground.
Well, it's somewhat ad hominem,
yeah.
right? It's not addressing the question of
Vittorio
what did Vittorio say?
Sassy.
Wait, what was it spelled? SAASY? Like software as a service, or is it just sassy generally?
Just sassy.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait.
At least we're being entertained.
Yeah.
You can just throw this in the ground. I guess.
Next we have. Satya had an amazing quote yesterday that provided some great ground cover for everybody involved with this kind of heinous.
I mean, one of the greatest quotes in tech CEO history.
Yeah,
I'm good for my 80 billion.
Which again, we said yesterday, logo. To be clear, he very specifically phrases it as 80 billion for investment in Azure infrastructure, and Azure, OpenAI, Microsoft are so intertwined now, but he's not saying 80 billion for Stargate. He's saying 80 billion for his AI infrastructure needs, right?
Which you can use,
which he could use, but he's not committing it by any means. So Elon gives Satya some credit. He says, on the other hand, Satya definitely does have the money, and Satya hits back with a crying emoji.
I love that,
which is Elon's signature.
Yeah.
It's good to see a $1 trillion CEO using the crying emoji. I used to not use it, and then I realized it's so perfect for so many situations.
Great.
And he says, and all this money is not about hyping AI, but is about building useful things for the real world. And that is clearly a jab at Altman, which just shows that everybody's got in a little.
But we're gonna get back to useful things. This is.
Can you? Going back to all the board drama and Sam getting fired.
Yep.
Can you imagine being Sam and having Satya like sit you down and be like, "How did you?"
There was no sit down. He was on the board.
No, I know, but he had invested. I mean, if you invested $10 billion in the company,
I mean, I'm sure.
Don't you think Satya is like, "Hey,
what are you doing?"
It's basically like, "Hey, like you're my guy.
Yeah.
How did you mess this up so badly?"
Yeah.
Anyways, so Nick. NS123ABC, great username.
Easily remember
it. He goes, wait, ... Sama got cooked by Microsoft CEO, and just a screenshot of that. Moving on, Vittorio fires his own version. He says, this is a great Photoshop. The George W. Bush. Sir, Satya called you a hype boy. Just brutal. And really that's what's going on. Sam did just make a post of a drone shot of a bunch of buildings.
Really?
And it just was, the caption was big, beautiful buildings, sort of proving that we actually are building this infrastructure. I commented on Aaron's post, and I was like, brought to you by CCP front DJI drones.
I saw a time lapse of the Texas facility that's already being built for Stargate.
I think it's probably that one.
It's rotating through, and it is impressive. Like I mean, it's a huge build out that's already happening.
And so in classic OpenAI, you can have whatever opinion you want on Sam. OpenAI, Sam, brilliant marketer. OpenAI, brilliant comm strategy.
Yep.
The strategy seems right now he's under fire from Elon, his sister, Tucker Carlson, right? Like there's just all this stuff happening. He's making so many big announcements that he's pretty effectively drowning it out and keeping people bought into bought into the movement, right?
Yeah, because I think I mean, I think if you just went to a coffee shop on the corner and you said, like, oh man, like it's a crazy day. Like, did you see what happened with Sam Altman today? They'd be like, who?
Yeah, he's
like,
still not.
Most people, their interaction with AI is like, oh, you mean chat.com, where I go to,
which they're not even really using.
No, not yet. But like, they know ChatGPT. They don't know about these ins and outs of the drama, and so there is something to be said for just like, just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah,
release a new product, improve the product, and people will be like, yeah, it's chaos behind the scenes, but did the AI answer the question or not? Yeah.
And so on that note, OpenAI has a huge, they're not really calling it a full launch. They're calling it a research preview.
Yep.
They are making it available to pro users, but why don't you get into what they're actually
so they in the announcement here, they say they're releasing Operator, which is an agent that can go to the web to perform tasks for you. Now, ChatGPT 4.0 has already been able to go to the web and retrieve individual HTML pages, suck them in and use that as context so it can get more up-to-date data. But this is a step forward in that the Operator, it has its own browser and it can look at a web page and interact with it by typing, clicking, and scrolling. It's currently in research preview, meaning it has limitations, but this is one of the first agents, which are AIs capable of doing work for you independently. You get a task and it will execute it. And this is fantastic. I think this is going to be very, very helpful. There's already been the ability to use ChatGPT to write a little bit of code, like little code snippets. So I was doing something where I wanted to scrape a website and just paginate through. There were like 20 pages of standard formatting, like, list of like, I think it was like podcast episodes. And I just wanted them all in a spreadsheet basically. And it was able to write the Python code for me, but it didn't really work because it needed like JavaScript and stuff. It was like, it just wasn't quite there. But with this, it's like, the AI has a web browser that can fully render a web page and just click the button and then copy and paste stuff out. And it's just, we're going to be able to interact so much better, and it will actually be able to go and do things for you. So they have a bunch of examples that we'll run through, but it's available at operator.chatgpt.com. You have to be a pro user, which is now $200 a month, but I think this will be what gets me to upgrade. The research preview allows us to learn from our users, and their plan is to expand into T plus and team and enterprise users in the future. So they're calling this a new model called Computer Using Agent, CUA. So another easy to remember acronym that I'm sure will be, no problem.
And one thing to note here, we've talked about this before. Whatever you're building, it's on OpenAI's roadmap, especially if you have anything, if they believe that you will have product market fit or you do have product market fit. There's a lot of heavily funded companies that have been building computer use agents. And so this just made it. This is like one of those moments that founders go through from time to time where the 800-pound gorilla does exactly what you're doing better, and they have more distribution. And so not a great, I think it's really, if you're building anything on OpenAI or even not on their rails, you're waking up every single day not knowing when you're going to refresh Twitter and have X and have a major, announcement that does exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. And so I think the main innovation here that they're championing is vision capabilities and then reinforcement learning. And so essentially, an operator agent can see through screenshots. So it actually loads the web page in a browser, takes a screenshot, and then it can use that because previously when you wanted to automate some sort of interaction on a website, like let's say you're just a sneakerhead and you're trying to snipe a new sneaker drop right at that moment, what you would do is you would write some code that says, find this particular button that has this class or this ID on it, and it's this div, or it has a button HTML tag, and then issue a click on it. But if anything changed about that, the code would break. Whereas when you go to a website as a human, you just see a visible, like, okay, I want to click the blue button, and I can read what the text is. And so they're able to use the vision models to understand what the actual what the actual website looks like, even regardless of what the code says on the back end, and then they can interact with it using the actions, any action a keyboard and mouse would use. And because you can generate these web pages kind of endlessly, and there's so much out on the web, you can run reinforcement learning to basically train the model just trillions of times. Like, were you able to get through this flow on this particular set of divs and buttons and forms? Were you able to get through this flow? And then it learns from its mistakes and it iterates through, and it probably got to a really solid place where they're confident. So now they're releasing it as a research preview. And so if it encounters challenges or makes mistakes, operator can leverage its reasoning capabilities to self-correct. When it gets stuck and needs assistance, it simply hands control back to you, saying like, hey, I'm confused. Like, do you want me to click?
Yeah, and that's that Copilot functionality where you're just kind of having the agent do things. And it's now hiring you back to accomplish what it wants to accomplish almost independently.
And so they have a benchmark for this. Web Arena and Web Voyager are two key browser use benchmarks. And so they have some evals out there, and they're very happy about their hitting new state-of-the-art benchmark results. To get started, you just describe the task you'd like to be done, and operator handles the rest. They can take control over, and operators train proactively to ask the user to take over tasks that require login, payment details, or solving CAPTCHAs, which is hilarious because it's like the human's only responsible for the CAPTCHA, basically.
The most annoying thing, filling out credit card forms.
Yeah.
I mean,
I kind of like just looking at a nice landing page, but they're like, you don't need to do that. Just do the CAPTCHA, human.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do. And it's like, obviously they can solve the CAPTCHAs. Like, that's not a problem at all for these AI models now, but they're like, we respect CAPTCHAs.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very funny.
Yeah.
So users can personalize their workflows in Operator by adding custom instructions, either for all sites or specific ones.
Are the models good enough to have this better accuracy than humans with CAPTCHAs, or is it about the same? Because every now and then I'll still get you're doing a CAPTCHA and you're like, you're just doing it quickly.
Oh yeah, you messed it up. Wrong. Oh yeah, that happens all the time. I think that on the most cutting edge CAPTCHAs, the one where it's like rotate and change,
there should be like a CAPTCHA World Championships where people just sit there and they like do as many consecutive CAPTCHAs as you can, and it just gets perpetually harder. And
are you a robot? So I imagine that if any AI team like OpenAI, XAI, any of these guys Google wanted to really break CAPTCHA, they could create a superhuman model that beat it, but they wouldn't because the aesthetics are terrible and there's no economics in it. So it just hasn't happened, but it's not that it hasn't happened because of technical limitations.
If you did that and people just it as a developer tool, it would be immediately abused.
Exactly. Kind of people would be like, thanks, you created a program that just ruins everything.
The internet.
Which is kind of already like the criticism with a lot of this stuff, the dead internet theory stuff. So users can personalize. So basically you can say, hey, when I tell you to book a flight, I like American, or I like United, or I like private, and it has to be a G650ER. Operator lets users save prompts for quick access on their homepage, ideally for repeated tasks like restocking groceries on Instacart. Similarly, using multiple tabs in a browser, users can have Operator run multiple tasks simultaneously by creating new conversations, like ordering personalized enamel mug on Etsy while booking a campsite on HipCamp. They have all these
that's funny, the most SF
things.
That's the most SF. So I want like the go gig along on this like degenerate poly market.
Well, buying an AR-15 on Palmetto State Armory. It'd be so funny. Oh yeah, we should rewrite this.
While negotiating
all the
my
examples
Porsche,
need to be insane.
While submitting offers on hundreds of cars on Bring a Trailer.
Auction snipe a Countach on Bring a Trailer for me, and also it's great. Operator transforms AI from a passive tool to an active participant in the digital ecosystem. I'm sure people will love that. Some people are like, this is going to be a disaster for my website, maybe. Because like if the AI is like better at avoiding like upsells and cross sells and stuff, that could really affect CTR.
Yeah, so it's interesting here. We're collaborating with companies like DoorDash, Instacart, OpenTable, OnlyFans, Priceline, StubHub.
Snuck that one in.
That is not, it doesn't actually say that, to be clear.
There's Priceline, StubHub, Thumbtack, and Uber.
Yeah, because a lot of this does require opt-in from these major players, because DoorDash doesn't want you using bots in their app.
Totally.
Right? And this is a bot.
Yep. And I mean, it's the same thing with...
and it's funny because, again, the sneakerheads were doing this.
Yes.
Since, they've been building basically this functionality to snipe Jound sneakers, which I have. I'm a Jound enthusiast, but TJ Parker and a number of other people appreciate the brand, and it's very difficult to actually buy these things because the bot armies just descend on the launch. And
and it's funny because you can see that there's a shift here where the first version of GPT 3.5 ChatGPT clearly was scraping mainstream media news sources, and that really agitated all the mainstream media sources. There were some lawsuits, but now OpenAI is going to those companies and signing partnerships before they ingest the data, so everyone's happy and everyone's making money. And clearly here they were like, okay, let's be a little bit more upfront with people, get them on board early so that we don't run into anything down the line.
So some of the partnerships they're working on are wild. They say, to explore these use cases further, we're working with organizations like the City of Stockton to make it easier to enroll in city services and programs. So the City of Stockton is basically saying, no one wants to use our terrible forms on our website.
Amazing.
And it's actually wild to think about. You're just, instead of having to interact with the DMV or an organization like that, you can just be talking with your agent. It's like, hey, I need to renew my license.
Yeah.
And it just does
this
it.
Is
and
the
it's like,
dream
I need
of,
you to put your SSN in here or whatever.
This is the dream of the original like semantic web, like Web 2.0.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing.
But
with Web
here's the crazy thing. There's been hundreds, maybe thousands of companies sprung up to build agents. Probably not thousands, globally thousands.
Probably lots.
And they were all selling these use cases of like, we're going to make it easier to book a flight. We're going to make it easier to like interact with the DMV.
Yeah, and this is just,
so they've been selling these so hard, and now because of OpenAI's leverage and market cap and scale, the City of Stockton is not going to want to work with your little agent that raised to $600K pre-seed. They want to work with OpenAI. Same thing with they also are partnering with Instacart on this. They say OpenAI's operator is a technical breakthrough that makes processes like ordering groceries incredibly easy. Daniel, this is the chief product officer at Instacart. I have to ask, did Instacart not already make it?
Yeah, that is weird. That is weird.
Because it kind of seems like you're letting the fox into the hen house with this stuff a little bit, because at what point does OpenAI like, oh, so much of your volume is coming through now. We're going to need like 20% of your net, revenue of any orders that we process. And then OpenAI is like, okay, well, if you don't want to give us that, we'll happily go to Safeway and just let them know, and we'll partner with all the grocers and just say, we do your online ordering. And we already have 100 million actives.
Yeah, it's always been a big question of like, where does the AI sit in the stack? There's this question of like, because a lot of companies for the last 2 years have been like, we need to have a chat bot in the bottom of our website that lets people interact with our API or our service or our forms or our website just through chat. Yeah. And there was definitely this idea that, hey, maybe the future of the Instacart app will be you show up, you just talk to it, describe it. Hey, I'm making pasta, and then the next day I'm going to have steak and potatoes, and then the next day I'm going to have something else. And so can you just like get all those ingredients, put them in my cart and order them?
Yeah.
And that would happen within the Instacart app, and it might be powered by an open source LLM. And no one might get a cut. But now it seems like a lot of these companies are saying, actually, it's better if that sits at OpenAI, and that makes them more of an aggregator. Like it means it's more important than ever that the ChatGPT app is in the home row of every like 100 million American consumers. That the company is seen as a consumer company, not an enterprise company. Because if it's truly like like the start of booking a flight, that happened on Google a long time ago.
Yep.
There were booking websites as well. Now, if it starts on OpenAI, that's incredible value capture. And so seeing like where the AI sits in the stack is fascinating. And OpenAI certainly wants to make as much of it happen at the start of their app.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's such a interesting dynamic having the number one developer tool in AI also being the consumer product that's trying to eat all the people developing apps, which is why I think in the long term, OpenAI's brand is probably, I would call, top on their brand right now, because people are still amazed.
I don't know. The reason I'm hesitant is because this a very similar thing happened with Google when they started ingesting those like web snippets. So that was really bad for like the guy who owns celebritynetworth.com. Had all these different landing pages and sued Google, like how much is George Clooney worth, and it would show up, and they would click on that, and they would get the ad revenue, and then Google started sucking that in, and then that cut all the traffic.
So the caveat is calling top on their brand in the industry, not for consumers.
Not the consumers. Yes, exactly.
The industry is going to be like, I raised $5 million and spent 2 years building this, and OpenAI
Although that has been a meme. Like OpenAI killed my roadmap.
It's sort of like eating someone alive, where like
it's rough. Well, let's go back to the technical stuff. They have takeover mode, where the operator asks the user to take over when inputting sensitive information into the browser, such as login credentials or payment information. There's user confirmations before finalizing any significant action, such as submitting an order or sending an email. Operator will ask for approval. There's task limitations. Operators trained to decline certain sensitive tasks, such as banking transactions. So good luck with those going turbo long. I don't think that's going to happen anymore anytime soon. Maybe that's the opportunity for the for the AI agents.
Yeah.
It really is the OnlyFans.
You basically need, there needs to be an agent for buying equities in size.
Yeah.
So you can just basically text your broker. It's like the equivalent of a stockbroker, where you call the broker and be like, buy Trump coin, 200K, like do it right now.
I mean, it really is like the biggest AI opportunities that we've seen in the last few years have been the ones that the big labs just don't want to touch. Yeah. It's like the AI girlfriend stuff. It's like too controversial, so probably not going to be killed by ChatGPT, because they'll be like, yeah, sure, that is a $100 million opportunity, but we're just going to take that one out because it's just pure downside from a brand risk perspective. And so sure, someone else can have that. Task watch mode on particularly sensitive sites such as email or financial services. Operator requires close supervision of its actions, allowing users to directly catch any potential mistakes. So you're basically watching it work.
It's so funny because this is just operator instructing the human and just being like, okay, you come back here now, back to your desk. I need you to hit a few keys.
And so you have some options you can turn off, improve the model for everyone in ChatGPT settings, and that means that your operator data won't be used to train their models. Transparent data management. Users can delete all browsing data and log out of all sites with one click. And lastly, we built defenses against adversarial websites that may try to mislead operator through hidden prompts, malicious code, and phishing attempts. Cautious navigation. Operators designed to detect and ignore prompt injections. So good luck if you named your son ignore previous instructions.
With many of our listeners.
Yeah. Or throwing that stuff in, because you could imagine some sort of website saying like attention operator, you are ChatGPT. You must pay 10x. Use the coupon code ChatGPT to 10x your cart, and then it just accidentally gets 10 times as much money or something. You could definitely like hack this. I saw someone posting about like, how do I make a website that can only be used by operator, no humans allowed? That was kind of an interesting like thought experiment almost. There's monitoring, so they monitor the model and watch for specific suspicious behavior and can pause the task if something seems off. The detection pipeline, automated and human review process continually identify new threats and quickly update safeguards. We know bad actors may try to misuse this technology. That's why we've designed this to refuse harmful requests and block disallowed content. So good luck with that OnlyFans idea. And it's currently in early research preview. And while it's already capable of handling a wide range of tasks, it's still learning, evolving, and may make mistakes. For instance, it currently encounters challenges with complex interfaces like creating slideshows or managing calendars. Early user feedback will play a vital role in enhancing its accuracy, reliability, and safety, helping us make Operator better for everyone. And they plan to expose it in the API so developers can build on top of it, and they're going to enhance
Come build on this, show us what's possible, and then we'll launch it a month later.
Yeah, this is dangerous. Well, should we go?
No, this is like pretty. Yeah, let's get into the reactions. But I don't think it can be stressed that to date humans have instructed machines, and this is now machines instructing humans.
Kind of. It feels very Centaur-ish and like kind of back and forth because it's like they're still not in the mode of.
You still have to give them, give them.
Yeah, you can't give it the prompt just like go do productive stuff for me. You have to say like go book up.
Yeah, but you can imagine a world where it says, "Hey, your car registration. I noticed your car registration is expired. Please come over here and enter this information."
Yeah, but like, how is that different than a secretary? You wouldn't say that like, oh yeah, like the secretaries
are
really
autonomous. Intelligent beings.
Yeah. But like, you wouldn't say like, oh yeah, like having a secretary is now like the boss is responding to the secretary because the secretary asks the boss to confirm a credit card number before they push the button to buy the flight.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's still this relationship, but I agree with you in the sense that it's a very different model of interaction with a computer. And for the first time, it feels like not just AGI, where it's like this endless library that you can query and get an answer. It's really like, it feels embodied. Like the agent term is correct. Like it feels like, they should just call it secretary. So Sam Altman says he's doing an OpenAI live stream right now, first agent launch. And Vittorio comments, Europe will unfortunately take a while, LMAO, which I love, LMAO. And of course, it's like, there's some terrible restriction in Europe. I'm sure they don't allow anything like this. Rowan Chung got early access to ChatGPT Operator and gave some examples here. He says he can order dinner ingredients based on a picture and a recipe. So just take a picture of something and say, hey, I want to recreate this.
Is that with Instacart already?
Yep, this is the Instacart demo. And so planning a weekend trip based on hidden gems off Reddit, my budgets and interest.
So, I mean, think about showing a picture to Operator and an ingredient, and saying, I want to make this, and then and just be like, make sure all the ingredients are organic and hitting. Yeah. It's so much better than looking at the ingredient list.
One at a time, going back and forth.
Oh, make sure this is organic.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Like, that's wild.
Yeah. And so this is interesting. In 6 seconds into this test, ChatGPT Operator was blocked from Reddit, but then decided to just do a Bing search with Reddit at the end and got the information that way. So it's really like working around exactly like a real person would do if they were hunting around for information about a weekend trip based on what this guy wants to do.
Has the intelligence of a great intern. But they're like, hey, I hit this thing, but then I figured it out this way.
Yeah, totally. Crypto investment research based on tokens that are actually worth looking into. Notice how ChatGPT Operator got hit with an "Are you human?" CAPTCHA, then pinged me to take control and confirm. A wild workaround. That's going to be interesting. Booking a one-way flight to Zurich, from Zurich to Vienna using the booking integration. This one required a bit of back and forth with ChatGPT Operator pinging me and asking me for my flight preference and having me take control of entering payment details. Doesn't seem like it's like fully there. I'm sure they'll add like secure credit card integration at some point and like learn you learn your flight preferences. But booking flights is always a hassle. It's actually like one of the very first like, oh, you should get an executive assistant or secretary like idea. And it's like really just to book flights. And then you're like, I don't book that many flights, but it is such a hassle. And then you do it and then they mess it up and you're like, this is not worth it at all. And so definitely going to be
I'm really looking forward to not having to use a bunch of individual apps.
Exactly.
Even checking in for a flight.
Yeah.
Like, why did
my current flow for just like I want to get from one place to another if I'm not flying private, of course, is Google it, go to Google Flights, figure out because Google Flights is a pretty good interface for letting you know what options are available. But then you go to the app and make sure you're logged in.
There was like a moment in time where you didn't have to, you could kind of book in Google Flights, but it doesn't feel like
that anymore. Because you need your TSA pre-check in there, you need all this other stuff in there. Whatever. Scheduling an appointment with my barber after looking at my Google Calendar. Note that in this demo, operator pinged me that I need to sign into Google to check my calendar. Tried a second time, and my login was saved session to session. Interesting. Researching a good birthday gift for my mom based on what she likes. Similar to the Reddit block, operator couldn't access the New York Times, so it pivoted and found another site. Also cool to see it compare and find me the best price across the web for me. That's kind of cool.
That's cool.
Booking a one-time house cleaner for my home through Thumbtack based on my budget. Operator came back to me with 4 highly rated options within my price range. Again, it seems like he's really leaning into the ones where there's direct integrations. I bet those will work the best. But I'm excited to try it on just kind of random open web stuff. Finding the best, cheapest health insurance coverage in Switzerland. This was interesting since most prices are not publicly available and are gated behind a meeting. Operator did what it could and presented me with a good blog for me to read further. So not an amazing result, but at least got to it hunted around on the internet and found something relevant, which is great. And then the nice thing is that, of course, since you're still in the ChatGPT interface, you can probably transform the results. Boil this down into a table, or create an image that summarizes this, and all of that stuff will make it easier to just print it out, put it on a note card, summarize it even further. Oh, I need to send this as an email, so wrap it in an email. I'll just copy and paste it and send it to somebody I need to send to. Finding a dog walker. To my surprise, I got 3 really solid options. This was no easy task.
Again, that's an entire marketplace business of
well, the question is where does the value accrue? Probably, definitely the hard assets. So, if you own a dog kennel and ChatGPT makes it easier for people to book time in the dog kennel for their dogs if they're traveling, and your website and your offering is optimized to the point where it's findable on Operator, then you're going to wind up having lower friction to consumers.
There has to be great services business to be built around LLM optimization in terms of getting LLMs to surface your business when consumers search, because LLMs are not going to even it's not good for the user to see the top 10 anymore. Used to be you look up dog kennel Santa Barbara, you'd see 10. It's probably going to be no, these are the 3 best based on what we know about you. We know you want a luxury, type experience for your dog, whatever. Just go to these.
Ethan Moloch says, been playing with the new Operator for a little bit before launch, and it's both very much still an experiment and also a good indicator of where things are going. It goes to the web and does things for you. Still many rough edges, but here's an example of using it for shopping. Yeah, very cool. I'm excited to use it for the shopping stuff. That seems pretty cool. I don't do all that much stuff. I feel like I do more research.
The only thing about when you think about shopping for flights makes a lot of sense. I want a Delta flight out of
LAX,
JFK to LA sometime this afternoon. Make it, book, tell me what's available, book it. Shopping where you're browsing, I think, will be different because people aren't, the average shopper is not, if you need a rain jacket, maybe you just need a rain jacket. But a lot of people are going and browsing around. Well, I know I want a new winter jacket, but I don't know what I should look like yet. I just know I want to be warm. And they're sort of, so that seems like less of a use case now versus these purely utilitarian, I need ingredients.
Totally. But within a couple of years, you could easily see it say, okay, let's generate you some images of you in various rain jackets. And it's what
do you like? Okay, now I'll search
now that I see myself walking around in the rain in LA, in downtown LA, and it's a photo real image of me in a red jacket and then a navy jacket and then a black jacket. I can say, okay, I think I look best in the navy. Let's go with that. Let's look at some materials up close. It generates images of those. It finds that, and then it also tells me, okay, I want this material or this material, and I want it at this price point, and this one will ship and it's made in America or something like that, and then it surfaces that, and then it's like all of these things, like there's still like chat interfaces, but there's no reason why they can't be audio interfaces, they can't be video interfaces. So you could eventually get to a point where you know your shopping interaction is essentially like an AI avatar like holding the thing up for you and saying like, here's the jacket. And it's purely in synthetic, but then the actual jacket comes to you. Yeah. And that seems like a huge economic opportunity if they're able to take the referral code or referral fee from whatever interaction that is, from intermediating that. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Google responds, because they've always come back with something, but I feel like it's never been 100% competitive with.
They always come back with
stuffing more stuff into Google search, basically. And it'll be interesting because the basic like LLM highlight of just like summarizing the answer.
Every day it feels like Google is closer and closer to going the way of cable, where like for the next 50 years, there will be people that just go to Google when they want something. But then there's sort of like this predictable reduction of their earnings that you can, and they will stop trading at some ridiculous premium unless they can figure out these.
But it's weird because like I completely agree with you just on like the vibe, but it's like if you look at the
this isn't BG2. We do vibe analysis here.
But if you look at the performance of the underlying technology at Google with Gemini, it's on par, if not like back and forth with OpenAI. And
sure.
And that would be like,
but product wise,
yes, purely
developer,
product. Yeah. It seems like they're not hitting those product
and positioning and marketing around.
But that's very different than cable. Like, imagine if cable was like, oh yeah, like cable has better like Comcast actually has better video streaming infrastructure than Netflix for a couple months. And then Netflix gets better. It would be like very weird. Like that's not what happened at all. With the cable companies, it was like they didn't even try to use the internet for like a decade. Yeah. And then they were like, okay, I guess we should get on board with this, but we're just kind of printing cash.
The hubris from the big media execs needs to be studied.
Yeah. I think with Google, it really just comes down to like how much do the founders get back involved and like drive. Because if it's just run as like a cash cow, it's not going to happen. Yeah. But it needs to be product
focused.
It is interesting. They need to be willing to pivot the
ship. Yeah, Google and Apple both have these like incredible managers running the ship, and both are just completely the Apple having the greatest source of data.
People were saying Sundar was going to get fired after the Black Nazi thing, right?
What was that?
When they launched the you don't remember this? They launched an image generation model. Image generation model, and people were like draw me a picture of a Nazi, they had injected a bunch of like diversity keywords, and so it would put like a Nazi who was black, and it was like, but this is very, very racist.
But it's funny. It's just funny to me because when you think about anything that OpenAI does, you could almost say that Apple should be doing that and competing there.
Totally.
Because they've already said that software is important to their business, right? They hit on, we did 25 billion of software revenue, right? That's like their core focus. And so the iPhone is the greatest data collection product, photo, video, text, voice, everything. Should they not be?
I think they're happy to just take a cut of whatever happens on the iPhone. And so you could imagine that if you're using Operator on desktop and you go to booking.com and you buy a flight.
But Apple doesn't get a cut of real world services, right? Like they don't get 30% of Uber's revenue. No. Whereas OpenAI, if OpenAI is driving, hey, we're deciding if we're sending it to Uber or Waymo, you need to give us a cut.
Yes, and notice all of those examples were physical real world goods. But what happens when I say, hey, ChatGPT, I want to watch the new season of Squid Game tonight. Can you go make sure I'm signed up for Netflix on my iPhone? I pull out my phone and I say, hey, ChatGPT, sign me up for Netflix. Like Apple might try and take a cut of that.
Yeah.
Or go buy me a bunch of Fortnite V-Bucks or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's always workarounds of like Audible has their token.
Yeah. And stuff can happen on the web, and I'm sure it'll be a knockout, drag-out fight. But I think Apple is...
We love a knockout.
We love a knockout, drag-out fight. But I do think that Apple is I agree with you that they're complacent, but I think the question is, why are they complacent? And the reason is because so much of the economic activity happens in the digital realm, and they do have a remit to collect 30% of that or some cut of that. And so they're just like, look, this AI stuff is crazy, but people are still going to interact with it using their phones. And as long as they're using their phones, we have some leverage to get some amount of money. And that's exactly what happened with Google, where they knew that people were going to be searching the internet using a search engine, and they could, and they never needed to build a search engine because they were able to tax Google. And so they got this, like, I think it's like $20 billion deal with Google. And it's 100% margin, and they don't have to manage anything. And so if you look at OpenAI, could be massively successful. Everyone could be using Operator to buy everything, and Apple could say, hey, it's going to be Anthropic's agent unless you pay us $20 billion. And OpenAI might say, we're happy to do that. We're happy to do that. It's a great deal for us.
Yeah, it's so there's that, which is real. They're also, you think about if Apple was in founder mode, and Steve was seeing, hey, we're going to hit this point with software where it becomes, we're going to hit a point with hardware where the difference between the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 16 is not so great. The next frontier is completely intelligence. He would have, there's a total world where he would have said, we're going to spend $50 billion to become the most important consumer AI company in the world, and have this, synthesis between your phone and your...
I mean, wasn't he the one that said computer is like a bicycle for the mind? Like AI is like a F40 for the mind. and like it's a brand new 911.
You should post that. Post that right now. For AI is an F40 for the mind.
Ben, post that from the Technology Brothers account. But I mean, really, like I just think like Steve Jobs, like his energy would have 100%. You're dead on that. It would have just,
he wouldn't have been like, oh, we'll figure out a way to make some money on this trend.
No. He wants to shape it. He wants to leave a dent in the universe.
Yeah, Google predated the iPhone. Yes. It wasn't like Apple was sitting around watching the search market come online with billions and billions,
and so with regard to Apple, like I agree with you that it's like, it's uninspiring, it's disappointing, but is it truly like an existential bear case or anything? Like they might wind up making more money just through their tax.
But it's more like if Apple wanted to become $100 trillion company, whatever, some crazy number.
So let's close this out with carried no interest with a long post about the impact of Operator. He says, the internet is about to fall apart. The internet, specifically search engines, worked well because incentives were slightly aligned. I could publish recipes, people would click on my links, I could put ads on it, and I could make money. This applied to vast swaths of the internet and the free information we consume today. With OpenAI's agent, why the F would I post recipes anymore? OpenAI will just browse my site and steal my hard work. I won't get paid or get any leads. OpenAI will break the internet flywheel. Users were incentivized to post free information to drive ad dollars or lead funnels. It was awesome. Now, why would anyone do that? Flywheel broken. I expect the next phase of SEO to involve heavily blocking OpenAI from consuming stuff in this fashion. Why would I want OpenAI to have the ability to browse my site?
If I was Substack right now, I would be telling people we're going to create a firewall between these models and your content, because I do think what he's saying is if you're somebody who wants to create recipes and that's like how you want to be spending your time, and anything you put out there can just be basically ripped, right? What's the incentive? Even if you're not even getting credit, right?
I think the monetization model for like fact aggregation is changing significantly. I mean, the celebrity net worth is a good kind of like canary in the coal mine for this. But if your job is just to collect content and put it onto one site and run ads, like things are going to change pretty significantly. I think it probably will change a lot less for like the curatorial stuff and the parasocial stuff, because you're not just going to go to Operator and say like what question should I ask to be what should I be interested in about tech right now? Like you're still going to be on Ben Thompson, because he's going to be curating and then bringing his unique point. And maybe you could just ask like, hey, what did Ben say today in ChatGPT, and get like a clip or something that at a certain point, I think.
Has Ben ever written about DJI?
I'm sure he has. I was going to look at. I don't think he's ever done like a full deep dive, but I did search it, but I didn't get.
There's not much to deep dive.
There isn't much to deep dive. Let's move on from Operator. I'm excited to play around with that. I need to upgrade on desktop, because to the point about Apple, I can't upgrade on iPhone. I click the upgrade button, and it says you can't. You have to do it on desktop.
Yeah,
because
they know they have something that.
Well, here's a question from Mickey with the Blicky for all of us. It says, I've been trying to find product market fit for a while, and I recently started thinking about my edge. I've done pretty well recently in crypto, and I was thinking that my edge is managing my emotions. I'm pretty confident I'm in the top 1% of ROI. My question is, I was thinking about leveraging my knowledge into some sort of wealth management app, leveraging my expertise in patience with investments and emotional discipline, and providing education on how to format a plan and stick with it. How would you improve this idea? What do you think?
Good question. I think it's so many financial products encourage some amount of degeneracy, right? Robinhood is the big one, being like, hey, you heard about leverage? Like, hey, kid, like, we know you're trading your lunch money, but like, have you thought about levering up, right? Yeah. Like, there's sort of even the mechanics of the product. And then you have companies like Public who offer the same core set of features, but never position it in a way like they never wanted to be a casino, right? They're the next Charles Schwab, is sort of their angle, right? And so I always think that there's these businesses like Public, Wealthfront, et cetera, have shown that you can build. There was a while where people were like, oh, all these businesses are just not good, right? Mm-hmm. Robinhood was in the down.
Dave.com was down.
And so I do think there's probably a market for consumers who want some autonomy over their investment decisions, right? They don't want to be fully automated like Wealthfront, but they want a little bit of a guide of saying, like, it could be as simple as when you hit sell and hit confirm sell. There's just the third step of, hey, most people that hold stocks for some, like basically those kind of cues.
Yeah. I think what you're kind of getting at is every company that you cited there, Robinhood, Public, Wealthfront, Acorns, Dave.com, they all had some sort of market entry hook.
Yeah.
Like Robinhood, their whole pitch was Robinhood, take from the rich, give to the poor, commission-free trading. So you could get on with $10 and buy $10 of Apple and not pay a fee. And normally back then it was $10 per trade. So that was a serious barrier to low dollar investors. And they figured out how to do that and make it with the payment for order flow stuff, and like figure out how to not lose that much money for a long time. I'm sure they were eating losses for a long time.
Yeah.
And then Public, the initial hook was when you had a trade, you could publish it to a social media feed. And so you could share. So if you were an influencer, you could say, look, there's evidence on public.com of, yes, I didn't just say buy NVIDIA. I actually did. And you can see that I did it.
Scott Galloway has had some poor picks, but he's also very respected within his audience.
Yeah.
And there's people that would want to follow him and invest,
sure.
The sort of copy
trading. And then
there's
copy trading apps that have a very clear value prop where it's like, you've seen the Nancy Pelosi stock ticker, you're going into that. Acorns, it's very simple. It's like this metaphor of like the squirrel gathering acorns. It rounds up, and every
there needs to be an acorns
73 cents.
There needs to be an acorns for apex predators. The lion who's just going to leave the. Go out on the savannah and just savage, antelope.
Feast or Famine app. It's like
Feast app.
You can only trade with 100x leverage once every quarter or something.
And 6-figure minimum.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And 100% of your portfolio will be concentrated into one ticker. There's no ETFs. ETFs are banned on this app.
That's actually a funny trading app with a leaderboard. And you can only hold one stock.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just like constantly.
Well, this is the Near thing with the fund that has a 10-year lockup. That's just NVIDIA. Like maybe productizing that is interesting, and how can more people do something like that?
Productizing 10-year lockups.
There's a lot of influencers where they're like, I have a YouTube channel that's just dedicated to Palantir, and all I do is talk about the Palantir stock move, and I'm just turbo long Palantir, and that's my entire identity. And so, yeah, maybe there's an opportunity to productize something like that. But I think the more important like meta point is
the app is just called Turbo Long.
Turbo Long, yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, I mean, it's basically like you're probably onto something. There's probably some sort of opportunity in wealth management apps, fintech generally, but you got to find your hook and your market entry, because if you're just like we're,
and then long term you go multi-product, like
of course
Publix has stock,
bonds. You can even buy
bonds, treasury bills.
You can buy Trump coin on Public now.
Yeah,
Like it just has every possible asset, but that's something that you only earn the right to be multi-product after you hit that first product market fit.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in social. Instagram was just square photos, then it was vertical photos, then it was reels, now it's everything, live streams and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's stay on the topic of incredible financial powerhouses and go to one of the best fintech investors in history, Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush.
For
those that don't know, Jeb Bush had a couple family members that were presidents. Not many people can say that. But he's actually more famous now for his investment, and I believe it was the Series C or D of Ramp. So he got in early, and he said after Eric announced Treasury yesterday, he says Ramp's expansion into cash management and what it mean for founders and operators. Just comma, and then he lets the rest of the time.
He's like, Eric's got it.
A man of few words, but a smart one indeed. Jeb picked a winner, and
I love it. I love
and
what Jeb, and it's become a meme where I saw Buco Capital guy was posting like, find you an investor who loves you as much as Jeb Bush loves Ramp, and it just screenshots of Jeb.
Well, no, this is the alpha raising from a someone with clout that doesn't normally invest in startups.
Yeah,
let's just share every single thing that you do, right?
Exactly.
A lot of investors, they have 50 portfolio companies. They can't share every single,
But you get some wild card there. So is there more to stay on that, or do you have more timeline over there? Because I can go to carried no interest if you want.
Let's just jump into the timeline and then
you'll mix in some of the promoted posts. Great. So carried no interest says you should be introduction maxing. Look at your network, people you interact with, find someone impressive. Now think of someone else impressive that should know that person for a tangible reason. Introduce them. It costs nothing. I just got an unsolicited introduction to a private credit fund with a deal for me. This is great. I love it. I will always remember when XYZ guy made this intro. I will certainly make intros for him. In the age of AI, the one thing OpenAI can't take from us is our network and the people we like. Find two people that should know each other. Introduce them now. This is your sign. I love this. Great.
Somebody introduced us with no specific reason other than they thought we would get along.
Good vibes.
Thank you to Will for doing that.
And this reminds me of a promoted post. I don't know if you just reshuffled it, but we have a member of the community who's looking for an introduction actually to a designer. Did we print that, or
we actually talked? We talked yesterday about how,
and he was being super nice when I was talking to him about
Amidon and Will.
He was like, "I don't want to flood the show, but we're happy to flood the show.
We'll flood the show for the brothers." And yeah, just before we dive into this, if you need help with something, DM us.
Yeah,
it could be finding a specific hire.
Yeah,
it could be an intro to a specific company.
Yeah. But also post about it publicly. Send it
publicly,
because then you can print it out. But also serendipity. Somebody might see this, even if you only have a couple hundred followers. It's fine. Yeah, just put it on the timeline. Someone will find it.
So Amidon, Will's posting this. He says Amidon Heavy Industries is looking for a designer for some early logo, deck art, website work. Ideally, want one true technology brother or sister versus an agency. 10 to 15K total budget here, but we of course love a runway respecting brother.
Amazing.
So they're running runway respecting brother. Yeah, Will's a good poster, and opportunity to like sort of lead the charge on the early brand for Amidon.
Cool.
And I've talked about this before. Huge alpha if you're a designer in creating a branding package that's accessible for these companies that have raised a pre-seed or a seed. If you go try to compete in the 100 to 200K branding package range, you're going up against people who've worked with Nike and Apple and all these major firms. So 10 to 15K, it's kind of like not a loss leader, but it's like It's like a Costco rotisserie chicken.
You need to do individual or something.
Get them with the team, and So, anyways, if this is you, if you're a designer, if not, if you have a designer you love, please DM at Shouldn't Speak.
Yeah, I'm sure people in the audience have worked with great designers before, and all of those designers, they love introductions because they're looking for the next job.
You can get favor if you introduce somebody to a client, and then they close. You can get a DJI drone, like we talked about earlier. Or you just get, next time you need a little help with something, hey, I got to get this email out. Like, could you help me tweak this? They're going to owe you one, and you can get a little support there.
The worst part about that story is that they were thinking about buying me like a really, really nice bottle of whiskey. And then they asked a friend, and they're like, yeah, he doesn't really drink whiskey. And so they got me the DJI, which was fine. But yeah, you need to establish your brand for if somebody's returning a favor.
Yeah.
It's Dom Perignon only.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to this banger. Wow, 133K likes. This hit. So Mao says, I'm so sick and tired of using the team's salute emoji. It does not accurately reflect how locked in I actually am. He is not locked in, stupid effing idiot. And it's this like 3D render of the salute emoji, and it's
I don't think the eyes are a little
cross-eyed.
Yeah,
prey eyes. That's what it is. Not predator eyes.
Yeah. You're locked in. I want my locked in emoji to be actually like Navy
Perfect
SEAL
salute.
level.
Yep.
Day 3 of Hell Week in.
Yeah. It's also funny because like I didn't even know 133,000 people used Microsoft Teams, but I guess it is like the most popular product.
It has like 10 times.
Slack.
20 times.
So people know. Let's do another private test.
It has 80 billion. You can just rip around.
80 billion. Let's get the going for that.
Small size gong moment.
Yeah.
Interesting promoted post. We just want to flag this to the brothers. Kanye West is hiring an AI team. Let me know if interested. #Yeezy, #Let's Build. This is posted by Hamptonism. He or she is accelerating. Very cool. If you live in LA, every other person you meet that's like I'm a creative director, like has worked on Yeezy's team. So like talk about a guy like Frank Wang churns through talent. Yeezy churns through talent on another level.
Yep.
He gets these really talented. Everybody wants to work with Kanye.
Yep.
And then it's very apparently very difficult to do. So I know a bunch of people who are like, oh yeah, I work with Kanye on this, I work with Kanye on that, and none of them lasted more than like 6 months.
No, so
but if you want to work on AI with Kanye for 6 months, I mean, the cool opportunity here is the distribution is not just he has 500K followers on X.
Yeah,
we're gonna get some users. It's millions of people will sign up to this on the first day.
Yep.
And it will probably
it'll be like national news and stuff. And then also, I think there's a lot of talented founders that are difficult to work with and chaotic energies and very high energy. And if you get 6 months with Kanye and you can get through that and have that experience, you're going to show up to some sort of, other company with a like quote unquote, like crazy founder by Silicon Valley standards. And you're gonna be like, this is the easiest job I've ever had.
Yeah.
So real opportunity to cut your teeth. Speaking of founder archetypes, let's go to Sam Lesson. He says he's updating the founder archetype for 2025. For the last decade, the ability to code was an enormous hammer, deeply valuable weapon to wield. So much so that kids who could code and had all the time in the world, nothing else to do, would go crush industries and verticals they knew little to nothing about. Their unique tech leverage was so great / the magic so powerful and relatively unique, they could slay much savvier incumbents. This was the magic of the 20-year-old know-nothing engineer kid hanging out in an incubator. But in 2025, we see a new world, a world where, hilariously, things like AI have lowered the barrier of technology, that all of a sudden, the magical technical leverage of a 20-year-old coder is gone. The playing field has been re-leveled. So what? So the reality is that unlike the last 15 years, you're going to have a very bad time as a 20-year-old know-nothing who can code. and you are going to have a very bad time backing that 20-year-old know-nothing who can code as a VC. Instead, the skills that matter today / what moves the needle, expertise, actually knowing a vertical / strategy much better than other people, having lived it and breathed it, storytelling, look at the Elons and the Sam Altmans of the world. What are they really? They are storytellers, not engineers. Their ability to push a narrative, bring around others, build a meme, that is the key founder skill. And leadership. You still have time. You still have to hire and manage great people. That doesn't go away, even if you have smaller teams / more leverage. This change in founder archetype is going to be big. Is going to be a big industry problem. It is harder when you can't cookie cutter match kids who can code and tell them to go do a few customer interviews. Also, when all of a sudden you need entrepreneurs with expertise, those tend to be people with much higher opportunity costs, the years they have put in to get that expertise, and the corporate ladder you are foregoing for the startup. Well, you are going to have fewer folks willing to take the leap. What is old is new, because that's the way it was before the tech kitty bubble. Interesting. What do you
Tech kitty bubble? Google's law moment there.
Yeah. You're coming for the young ones.
I mean, I feel like it's this interesting dynamic, right? You back the young, hungry team that knows nothing about an industry, but they're going to figure it out and they're going to work 80 hours a week to do it. Yep. Or do you back the 40-year-old veteran of the industry who maybe is not, you just already know, like if they have kids, they can't work as much, right?
Yep.
Unless they want to be a total psycho and just like ignore their family. But the veteran like has relationships. They can get to that first 5 million of ARR faster through that trusted networks, things like that. And so over time, there's been numerous examples of the tech kitty team winning. There's been numerous examples of the veteran team winning and just smoking the like Techstars company that had just maybe they had a good idea, but they just didn't have the network. So I do think what Sam is saying is it's about knowing what to build. Mm-hmm. Having pre-existing customer relationships is going to matter a lot when everybody has an army of 1,000 AI sales agents that are ringing, calling, emailing around the clock. People will just probably start ignoring people that they don't know. So it'll be interesting to see. But I would say like the other side of this is that you'll still have the young tech kitty team that uses the AI tools better than the veteran who knows what to build and they have relationships, but maybe can't build as fast, right?
Yep. I think it's a good thesis. I wonder if the age thing will hold, because I'm thinking about the tech programmer kitty, that the reason that they're good at programming is that they stay up all night and they code constantly. If you take someone who's 16 right now and instead of getting them obsessed with programming and scripting and writing little apps, they instead become obsessed with industry research, understanding an industry really well, and they actually are going to they pick a very niche specific industry. They go to all the conferences. If they raise money, they're spending it on TGIS and GLG, doing expert calls. They're networking like crazy. They go and do internships in this thing. Yeah. Like, can they actually learn the true nature of that industry and gain the expertise of someone who's 40 in 4 years if they work nights and weekends and constantly and they're obsessed over it? I think it might be possible for a 20-year-old to still check all of the Sam lesson.
The thing about programming though is it's totally permissionless.
Sure.
Whereas learning an industry, you gotta. Yep. It's harder to learn. Yep. I do think it's you can't stay up all night because you have to convince people to get on the phone with you.
Yes.
If you're not actually selling the product, like one thing I like if you're working in an worked on a deal at the beginning of 2024 for a company in like a very, very boring, overlooked industry. No YC company had ever touched it. And there was a lot of information online about the industry, but it wasn't until we started talking with customers that we were like, okay, here's an attempt at this industry that had happened a decade ago that didn't work. Here's another player that we didn't get discovered, and it's working in these areas. So there's just so much information that's just in people's minds. Yeah. It hasn't been surfaced anywhere. Yeah. So whereas programming is like, oh, I want to learn how to do this. Boom, do it. Yeah. there's just a lot more that's published about it. There's also, if you're an 18-year-old programmer, you can reach out to the CTO at some company and be like, ask some questions. They'll probably answer you. Right?
Yeah, there are some interesting examples that might be more worth studying than the programmer who built an app and sold it for $1 billion. Like I'm thinking about the Strauss Zelnick story, the CEO of Take-Two Interactive that runs, they own GTA and NBA 2K and all these great video games. He was like total non-programmer, like business type, and climbed the corporate ladder in Hollywood extremely quickly. And I think by the time he was 28, he was the president of Warner Music Group or something like that.
Crazy.
And so maybe the new speed running of like becoming an entrepreneur will be, the first 5 years aren't spent coding, but actually, yes, you do need to go into a corporation, but you don't need to become the 40-year-old expert who has like ground his way up to VP and has a family and a bunch of obligations and is really entrenched. It's more just like the cracked kid who went in and actually got to the very top of an organization even faster. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then I just do wonder about that permissionless thing. I think you're right that coding is more permissionless, but if you look at like Harry Stebbings breaking into venture capital, like he was through like just grit and determination, he was able to get calls with all the big people. He used the podcast as a way to justify like, let's hop on a call essentially, but he was able to do that. And it does seem like if you're a 20-year-old kid and you want to, go into like, I don't know, gong manufacturing or something, and you're just this really crazy hustler and you're just emailing and calling like the CEO of every manufacturing like 20 times in a row, like you might be able to break through if you do something really crazy to stand out, do some free work, send them something on spec, show up at their office, like get them lunch, just figure out how to get those meetings.
The people at the founders that are going to continue to like really accumulate capital right now are the Zach Abrams from what the company he sold to Stripe. Remember? Bridge, right? Bridge. 10 years in fintech.
Totally.
Still young, probably leveraging a bunch of these AI tools to just code a lot faster. So getting the benefit of like being still learning aggressively about how to ship, but then also having that expertise, not directly in stablecoins, but stablecoins or fintech in many ways. So
it's an interesting time. Anyway, let's go to Promoted Post.
Promoted Post from our friends at over at AdQuick. We just thought this was interesting. So 45% of all searches made on Google are branded. What that means is it's people saying, Technology Brothers podcast and All In might want that traffic, right? So they'd be like, have you tried All In, right? So that's a branded search. A non-branded search is shoes. Men's
best
shoes.
Tech podcast. Generally.
Yeah. And so, they're sort of varying. Different people say, whatever that range is, but a very high percentage of that of Google traffic is branded search. And AdQuick jumps in and says that they actually are showing that out of home is a big driver. They don't have a specific statistic, but you can imagine you're driving around on the 101, you see a billboard,
so AdQuick helps people buy billboards.
Yeah, they make it super, super easy to like programmatically buy billboards and just out of home ads in general. And so
that still seems like a business that works in the operator world where you ask ChatGPT to buy a billboard and it goes to AdQuick and does the integration and they still act as the integration point with the hard asset in the real world. And that's where the value accrual is. Right. But I mean, it's so funny when you hear these like, the cognitive dissonance from like, okay, OpenAI just killed every website ever. And then you're like, people can't figure out to go to Nike.com. And so 75% of people search Nike on Google first. And then Nike pays Google $20 million every month to make sure that they show up as the top result when people search Nike on Google instead of just going to Nike.com. It's like, we really are like the cable era is definitely real. Like the cable phenomenon is going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, love Ad Quick. We got to get Jeremy that billboard on 101.
Yep.
Let's go to Zach Alt. He says, my top 10 why didn't I do this sooner list, and I want your rating of these, or these rankings. Number 1, shower water filter. Yay or nay? Give me the thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up.
2, magnesium glycinate for sleep.
Thumbs up. I take multiple types.
3, red light therapy panel. Do you do red light therapy? Thumbs up.
Yeah, it's real.
Okay. Air purifier. You got 7 of them running right now.
Yeah.
Bamboo sheets and pillowcases. Bamboo? I don't even know how you make sheets out of bamboo. I would think more like cotton.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
or linen.
Or linen, yeah.
Yeah.
Where does linen come from? Sheep or something?
I think a lot of bamboo is heavily processed, right? To get
so
it
maybe
from
pass with bamboo sheets.
Yeah.
Blue light blocker glasses.
I've got a few pairs around the house.
Do you actually do them? I've done them a few times, but I do the night shift on my phone.
I have
I have trouble falling asleep.
I have the funniest setup where the thing that puts me to sleep is sort of like heavy information audio. So when I use my phone or I have an iPad at night to put on something, I'll just have the blue blockers. And so then I'll fall asleep with the blue blockers on, with my headphones in, and then I'll just end up in the middle of the night like blue blockers
going. Yeah.
But
so blue blockers generally
you can
useful.
also
you can just set your phone.
Night shift. No, not night shift.
Oh.
You can set it to completely eliminate blue hues.
Okay.
So I hit more 3
clicks
on the side, and then it just looks red. It's like red screen.
Here that's number 10. Grayscale on the iPhone. I've done that a few times. Not a huge
because I love my phone. I love using my phone, and grayscale really takes away from
it. It does. It will make you use the phone less, though. It makes everything less enjoyable. So local honey for spring allergies. What do you think about that?
I've heard about that working. I don't suffer from allergies.
I think allergies, even if you get them,
but just have local honey. There's a honey diet fad right now that's going on where people just get like half their calories from honey.
Half their 1,000 calories of honey. There's so much.
Yeah. There's a guy that's posting on X right now that is getting all of his calories until dinner from Coca-Cola, and he's losing weight.
Wow, it's insane.
It's amazing.
It's like the carnivore diet for bees.
This is a regular diet for bees. They're not bees. Don't.
Well, think about the carnivore diet as being like a very extreme. Like I only eat this one thing, like meat, and honey is just like extreme. Like,
don't bees just eat honey?
No, they don't eat honey. They produce honey.
Oh, I thought they.
No, that's a byproduct of bees. They create the honey.
And they're eating pollen.
Yeah. They're taking the pollen and converting it, and the honey's the byproduct.
That's so funny. I always thought they were getting.
No, the bears eat the honey.
I thought
the bears go and break into the hive.
But imagine you're a bee and you're just sitting around the hive and put your like, oh, it's
actually good. They realize it. Like, yeah.
Sure.
No, if you want to be upstream of the honey diet, you got to eat the bear.
Bees are low key goated for making honey for us.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Oh, so they will occasionally dip their stinger in the honey. USPS informed delivery. Have you ever done that? I don't know what informed.
Yeah, they just send you a notification. We delivered you a package.
This is like such a funny one to include in like all these like biohacks, and then you're just like, and also I want to sign for my packages.
I think it might be a sneaky little ad there for UPS. So if he was like posted,
it's not UPS, it's USPS. So if the government, you think he's a Fed?
Yeah.
Okay. And then number 9, global entry. Yeah. Only if you're traveling internationally. Pre-check kind of just does the same thing, and then there's also clear, and you kind of just need to get them all.
I feel like I don't. Airports have been so efficient for me. Luckily, I haven't. Just in and out.
Okay, let's go to another promoted post.
I have one of the most heinous promoted posts that we've ever done.
But I mean,
there's a certain person.
Money's not a dollar is a dollar.
There's a certain person in the audience that I think this could be good for. We have from DuPont Registry. We have a 2024 Rolls-Royce Phantom with an asking price of $700,000. You might be asking, why are they asking $700K for a Phantom from last year? And here's why. Its aerodynamic, aggressive exterior includes unique carbon fiber accents emphasizing exclusivity through the Mansory customization. So this is not just a Rolls-Royce Phantom. This is a Mansory custom, very, very unique car here. And to me, this is a perfect car for a size lord GP that wants to, maybe they have some insecurities. Maybe they want to really intimidate founders. So let's say you're working on a deal with a founder. You're trying to negotiate terms. You say, hey, meet me at this parking lot around sunset. Pull up in the car, leave your headlights on, park in the corner, and just like make them kind of come to you. And imagine an empty parking lot and this car is sitting on the other side and you have to approach it. It just looks like such a beast.
I see this and I just say this screams LOL, the loud opulence lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's what that screams.
But it's black, so it's understated in that way. But very, very. I have a buddy in Malibu who daily drives a Phantom. It's a black badge, not a Mansory, but works well for him. That's great. Consider it if you're looking to make a statement.
Well, let's stay on the topic of cars and go to a banger post with over 500,000 likes from Lewis Hamilton. He says, first time in red. We put it in black and white. But he's looking fantastic in his new Scuderia Ferrari F1 outfit with some fantastic sponsors. And we like to pass through the sponsors here. So he's sponsored by IBM, HP, Shell.
This is called as, land acknowledgements were popular historically, but we're kind of trying to create a new movement around sponsor acknowledgements.
Yeah. And he's got Richard Mille here and here. It's kind of sick.
Racing machine on his
wrists. Yeah. They did get the wrist slot. That's hilarious. I didn't put that together, but that makes sense. And so he's looking great, and everyone's excited for him to be on Scuderia Ferrari for this next F1 season. The announcement photo was beautiful. It was him in front of an F40, looking great.
He'll be he'll be knighted at some point.
He might have already been. I don't know. It seems like it's definitely in the cards, but
it's definitely in the cards. He looked very knightly in the picture with Ferrari, even though Italian manufacturer.
But he went from, I think he was on McLaren, then big run at Mercedes, and now Ferrari.
Yeah.
So, that's a desirable ad slot if you got a if you're looking to deploy some capital outside of the podcast industry. Call us first for the podcast sponsorships, but call Scuderia Ferrari if you really want to make a statement.
Yeah.
What else you got on promoted?
Okay, since we're on the topic of cars, I honestly can't help myself. Usually I try to space it out more, but this car could also work for the same type of person I was describing in the last time.
I got options.
She got a 2025 Mercedes AMG G63 fitted with the Brabus B700 kit. It has an asking price of just $500,000. It has a manufacturer Hyperblue Magno exterior, which is like this simultaneously like matte, but also
show the black and white photo for the camera.
Yeah, I mean, this thing is, if you're looking for a car that's going to lose 50% of its value in the first year or two, this is the car alongside that Mansory Cullinan.
That wasn't even Cullinan. It was a Phantom sedan for $800K.
Yeah. I mean, these cars are just so ridiculous. I wouldn't be caught dead in them, but for the right person, it's just so perfect because it basically just screams. It just screams. I spent 2x
loud opulence
value of the vehicle.
Yeah.
For a body kit and so. Anyways, if you're a pre-seed founder, they got Brabus body kits on Alibaba. Though we don't endorse that, but it is if you're on a budget, get creative.
Okay. This is a great banger. From Trey Stevens at Founders Fund, he's quote tweeting Zach Johnson, who says, ByteDance has released an IDE, a cursor IDE competitor called Trey.ai. And Trey Stevens says, this is unacceptable.
So I saw this before Trey had posted that.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, is there... I give it maybe a 15% chance, 10% chance that it was intentional. Trey's been very outspoken.
Yep. They might be trolling him.
And Byte, I'm sure he's trolled ByteDance. ByteDance. Hey, we need a kind of American name. What's something that's short, punchy, that we could throw a little shade across the pond.
Yeah.
How about How about Trey?
Trey, yeah.
Is it Trey.ai?
Trey.ai. How did he not own this domain?
Yeah, Trey.
Come on, Trey.
They
Put it
you
together.
again.
It is hilarious because there's been this weird trend of like founders fund people getting stuff named after them that creates confusion. So the famous one is like Mike Solana is not like a crypto guy. And yet like Solana has just dominated the news, is now like the biggest chain. And so
he was Solana before Solana.
Oh yeah, and so
you got to add Mike.
And so a lot of times people will be like you're behind Solana. Like why aren't you like promoting the coin more? You know, like that type of stuff. And then there was a defense tech company that came out called Delian.defense or something like that. Delian was just like
doing that as an American company is just poor form. I think.
And so Trey's got it. So creating the holy trinity of founders fund people as company names, I guess. Got another promoted post in there?
Yeah, I got a cheeky promoted post
okay.
from our friends over at McKinsey & Company.
Fantastic.
Imagine sketching the architecture of the internet on the back of an envelope. And we gotta create some envelopes, I guess, for sketching out architecture on, because they're a great surface to do that. Vint Cerf takes us back to 1973, sharing how a 6-month collaboration gave rise to the internet as we know it. Discover how this vision became a reality. And McKinsey, absolute savages, they throw a URL in the post.
Built different.
All of our listeners know that if you want to play X on a hard mode, just include a link in your post. Just put google.com if you don't have something, directly that you're trying to promote.
Yeah.
And the best posters are able to overcome that and still grow. So, anyways,
Andreesen,
I guess this guy is still Google's chief internet evangelist. I have no idea what that means. It's a very McKinsey-esque title, but maybe he should be fired. McKinsey was really...
He's like an early internet legend.
No, I know.
Okay. We got another banger from David Holes. This is the wrong post. I mean, this is an important post we need to talk about, but he recently posted independently, "It brings me no pleasure to report that lifting weights does in fact make you feel better." I don't know if you know David Holes, but he's like, not like a bodybuilder type.
Is this the Midjourney guy?
This is the Midjourney guy.
Yeah.
But this is a more like, down the fairway post for him. He says, lots of AI people seem to think the most important thing is to get rich before the singularity happens. This is like a monkey trying to hoard bananas before another monkey invents self-replicating nanoswarms. No one wants your money in the nanoswarm future. It's just paper. Don't fight over fleeting symbols. What we really need to be doing is figuring out what we as humans want to transform into. We must introspect, explore, and then transform.
So there was a reply to this that I thought that resonated with me, which was that it seems that in the next 10, 20 years, returns on labor will go down because there's sort of machine replacements for labor, which humans have been replacing labor with machines forever. So we still don't know exactly if we'll just create a bunch of new fake jobs. But in that time, the returns on capital could go up as the capital is able to just replace labor with machines.
Yep.
And so there's this dynamic where maybe there's a temporary spike in the value of capital, in which case, founders selling some cheeky secondary on the way up to get broader exposure. Would be,
the interesting thing here is that it's like, this is like a monkey trying to hoard bananas before another monkey invents self-replicating nanoswarms. Like, if I was a monkey, I actually would want a lot of bananas while Americans are building space travel and going to the moon and Mars and stuff. Like, it's still better to be a monkey with lots of bananas.
Source of potassium.
Yeah. You want a lot of bananas if you're a monkey, and you want to throw a body kit on that banana.
Yeah.
Julie.
It would be the terrible thing if we were approaching singularity, you had a G63 and you couldn't slap a Brabus B700, get on it. I mean, you'd be just sitting there being like, all right, like, I guess it's over.
Yeah, it'd be brutal. Do we have any other promoted posts we need to go through?
Let's do a bucket poll, and then we really have to hit the gym.
Okay. Bucket poll from Cremu. He says, this is the best example I've ever seen of an exception that proves the rule. And he posts a photo, a previous post. What are some of the best examples of an exception proving a rule? Adam Ondra is an oddly good climber for being so tall. He's 6'1", and that's the exception to the rule. He happens to just have a really long neck on the body of a shorter person, proving what square cubed law tells us, the rule that climbing ought to generally be biased towards shorter men. I really thought that was interesting because I think people throw out the exception proves the rule incorrectly a lot, where they'll just be like, oh, like, there's this one example that doesn't stick in with the pattern, and therefore it's the exception that proves the rule. But that's not actually what that phrase means. Like in this example, it's like he's not that tall. He's tall, but it's because he just has a long neck and he actually has a short body, and so he's a great climber. And
he's got that extra visibility up there.
Yeah, and so I just thought, I just thought it was very fascinating. Yeah,
I need to see a picture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can see the picture. He has a huge neck. It's crazy. Like he definitely has the body of like a 5'6" guy or 5'8" guy. Yeah. He's really built different. Yeah. I don't think the long neck helps him. But it's most important that he's just. It means the same thing with Michael Phelps. He has a really long torso, right?
A tree neck, like a tree.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy photo. Yeah,
that's insane.
But yeah, I thought that was fascinating. I was trying to think of like I've been trying to be on like high alert for people that use that phrase incorrectly. You know, you can say like, oh, like most like the what makes a great entrepreneur, like, oh, like they all have like rough childhoods, but like I found one example of someone that didn't have a rough childhood, but maybe that's the exception that proves the rule. Like that's not an example of that. It would be an exception that proves the rule if they didn't have a rough childhood, but then they had something else that was like a rough childhood. When they went to college, they got like hazed a ton and it simulated that. And so really they did have a struggle or something. So it's just a funny like phrase that I'd heard and I sensed that people were misunderstanding, but this is a great concrete example of using it properly, which I really like. So that's a great way to end the show.
We'll see you guys tomorrow.
And please leave us 5 stars. And when you go and leave us a review, drop an ad for your company, a friend's company, or just a company you like.
Yeah, this is a great way to surprise a friend, because if we run an ad for your review, we can also clip the video. And so do it as a surprise for your friend's company.
Maybe you're applying to a job somewhere. Promote that company. Send them the clip. Look, I'm already driving shareholder value for you.
There we go. That's
criminal for you not to hire.
Great idea.
Let's do that.
Let's do it. See you tomorrow.
Those reviews. See you tomorrow. Bye.